I'd like to call the June 14, 2018 meeting of the Plaquemines Council to order at 1 p.m. If we do a roll call, please. Let the record reflect that 7 council members are present. Councilmember Bartholomew is absent, and Councilmember Williams, the chairwoman, is absent. Therefore, I'll be chairing this meeting. If you please stand, we'll start with the pledge, and then if Reverend Giles could lead us in a prayer. We'll do the pledge first. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Our Father, our God, how excellent is your name in heaven and in earth. We thank you, Lord God, for life and life more abundantly. Just for allowing us to assemble in this place one more time. We pray, Lord God, for a unified and peaceful meeting. We pray, Lord God, that you continue to lead us and guide us in your ways of mercy. We pray for our president, Mr. Amos Cormier. Lord, give him strength, give him good health. We pray for our various councilmen who represent various districts and those who have come, Lord God, to share on this day. Now, Lord God, let everything be done in decency and in order that you may get the glory. In Jesus' wonderful name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. All right, if you would, please cue in if you have any withdrawals or deferrals. We'll clear this agenda a little bit. Mr. Russo?
Yes, at this time I'd like to defer 6C.
Is that all?
That's all.
Mr. Burt?
Yes, I'm going to defer 6J, K, and L at this time, please.
Was that all? Mr. Lapine?
I'd like to defer 7D. I don't think they're here. That's it.
Is that all? Ms. Trufant-Sallant?
Yes, defer 7B.
B as in boy, ma'am?
Yes.
And I will be deferring on behalf of Ms. Williams 6B as in boy. Anyone else? Let's, I think we only have one bid in advertisement. Let's get that over with.
A resolution authorizing the acceptance of bids for furnishing oil, grease, lubes, etc. for a period of 1 year for use parish-wide and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I'll offer. Second, Mr. Juneau. Ms. Staniford.
I have a bid. After due advertisements, bids were received May 22nd from the following: Go Bear Oil Company from Thibodaux, Gulf Coast Oil and Supply of Belchase, Chauvin Brothers of Belchase, Retief Oil of Harvey, and SIAC of Gramercy, Louisiana. It's my recommendation, with input from the department heads, that I recommend the acceptance of the overall low bid of Go Bear Oil and the overall low bid of Gulf Coast Oil for the items detailed within. The only exception would be the only bid that came in on item 3C1 to award that one item to Chauvin Tractors.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the table? From the audience? Administration? All right, with none, machine, please. Let the record reflect that the bid was passed 7-0. We have no proclamations. Thank you, Ms. Staniford. Danny, what yeah, I didn't say. What we have Taylor and Kosich and LV. Anybody else? Any other lawyers for executive session? You, Shane, are you doing Peter's stuff?
Mr. Colby
Okay. Let's do beer and liquor licenses. Cue in if you have one, please. Mr. Russo?
Yes, I have a renewal for Dustin and Rosemary Gainey, Zydeco's Restaurant, 7010 Highway 23, Belle Chase, Louisiana, doing business as Tad Enterprises.
Anyone else? All right, with none.
I'll offer.
Second by Mr. Burt, offer Mr. Russo. Any questions, comments? All right, Zydeco passes 7-0.
Thank you.
No problem. I'll tell you what, let's do, does anybody have any deferrals on executive session? Or are we good to go with all of them? Huh? Yeah, but Shane's going to handle Peter's stuff. All right, if none, let's go with executive session.
1A, discussion of attorney-client privilege communications regarding ownership of lands in the Venice Dome area, LRS 42:17A10, Attorney L.V. Cooley, Councilmember Burt. Number 2, the Parish of Plaquemines versus ConocoPhillips et al., 25th JDC, number 60-982, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus HHE Energy Company et al., 25th JDC, number 60-983, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Exchange Oil and Gas Corp. et al., 25th JDC, number 60-984, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus LLOG Exploration Production et al., 25th JDC, number 60-985, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Equitable Petroleum Corp. et al., 25th JDC, number 60-986, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Linder Oil and Gas Company et al., 25th JDC, number 60-988, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Riverwood Production Company et al., 25th JDC, number 60-989, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Hellas Oil and Gas et al., 25th JDC, number 60-990, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Bepco LP et al., 25th JDC, number 60-991, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus North Coast Oil Company et al., 25th JDC, number 60-992, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Cascades Operating Company et al., 25th JDC, number 60-993, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Goodrich Petroleum Company et al., 25th JDC, number 60-994, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Devon Energy Production Company et al., 25th JDC, number 60-995, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Roselle Operating Company et al., 25th JDC, number 60-996, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Palm Energy Offshore et al., 25th JDC, number 60-997, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Great Southern Oil and Gas Company et al., 25th JDC, number 60-998, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Hillcore Energy et al., 25th JDC, number 60-999, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Apache Oil Corp. et al., 25th JDC, number 61-000, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Campbell Energy Corp. et al., 25th JDC, number 61-001, Division B. The Parish of Plaquemines versus Total Petrochemical and Refining et al., 25th JDC, number 61-002, Division B. Attorneys Carmouche, Kosich, Parasola, Taylor, Connick, Berglass, and Tankersley. Councilmember Williams. Number 3, Daniel S. Lott et al. Versus Plaquemines Parish Government et al., 25th JDC, case number 64-553, Division B. Attorney Peter Barbay, Councilmember Williams. Number 4, Paula Dove versus PPG et al., 25th JDC, docket number 64-358, Division B. Attorney Danny Garrett, Councilmember Williams. Number 5, Plaquemines Parish Civil Service Commission et al. Versus PPG et al., 25th JDC, docket number 63-231, Division A Attorney Danny Garrett, Councilmember Williams. Number 6, Plaquemines Parish Council versus Plaquemines Parish President Amos Cormier III, 25th JDC. Case number 64-047, Division A Attorney Danny Garrett, Councilmember Williams. And number 7, Logan Lott et al. Versus Plaquemines Parish Government et al., 25th JDC. Case number 64-470, Division B Attorney Danny Garrett, Councilmember Williams.
Do we have an offer? I'll offer. Second. Mr. Edgecombe, seconds. Before we move into the executive session, it passes 7-0. We will do Mr. Taylor and Mr. Kosich first, and then we'll have LV come in. That's fine, and then Mr. Culver will go with your stuff. And then when we come back out, we'll go to the President's report. Then Mr. Nelson will go to your presentation, and then followed by the opioid presentation. All right, we'll adjourn. We'll take a recess for executive session. At 1:12. You ready? All right, I apologize for the delay. Call the meeting back to order at 2:25 p.m. I have a motion by Councilman Burt to amend the agenda. Councilman Burt, I'll second. One second before we vote. Mr. Burt.
Item 1.
Mr. Burt. You in, man. You in. You in. Just you in. Just hit request to speak. Why not? Try.
Yeah, I'm on, okay. There's 2 items to add to the agenda. The first item is to authorize Attorney L.V. Cooley to take necessary action to protect Plaquemines Parish property as recommended in executive session. Item number 2, authorize special counsel to work with all parties to resolve all disputes in regard to the civil service administrator's position as recommended in executive session. I'll offer.
All right, Mr. Burt offers. Mr. Juneau seconds. Do we have any comment from the public, from the administration? Anybody from the table?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
My name is Jack Joseph.
Sir. That's right. Yes, sir.
My name is Jack Joseph. I just want to speak on my behalf. I want to bring to you point of order, sir. You as a chairman cannot make or second the motion. You can only vote to break the tie. Just a comment and my observation.
Mr. Joseph, I didn't second the motion. Mr. Juneau seconded the motion.
You had a motion earlier, sir. Yes, you did. Thank you.
I offered.
Okay.
I'll offer again.
Any questions or comments from the audience? All right, with none, this is to amend the agenda on the 2 items from Mr. Burt. Is it on?
Or votes pending.
I'm not on, Kim. Yeah, my If everybody could revote, leave it on. All right, Mr. Burt's item passes 8-0. Mr. Burt, 1 second.
Item number 1, authorizing the attorney L.V. Cooley
You on?
to take necessary action to protect Plaquemines Parish property rights as recommended in executive session. Item number 2, authorize special counsel to work with all parties to resolve all disputes in regard to civil service administrator's position as recommended in executive session. And I will offer.
Second by Mr. Juneau. Any questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the table? With none? Let the record reflect. Passes 8-0. All right, a little change. We're going to hold off on a presidential address. We're going to go to item... We're going to go to item 7I.
Presentation by Kendra Arnson and John Tesovich regarding the Mid-Barataria Sediment Diversion Project. Councilmember Lapine.
I'm going to go out. Hold on one second.
Okay, we moving. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Kendra Ann Arneson's here. I also put the John Tesovich. He's out of the town, out of the country. I think you and Mr. Ricks will speak today on the diversion. We actually give you a short, condensed version, but we appreciate your effort, and the floor is yours, Ms. Kendra.
Thank you, Councilman Lapine. I'm actually going to sit this part out and come in on the public comment period. Captain George Ricks with the Save Louisiana Coalition will be giving the presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ricks.
How we did it before.
Did that.
From beginning. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, Mr. Lapine. Appreciate the opportunity to give this presentation. I'll be as brief as I possibly can, but it's a very important issue. It's probably the most important issue you're going to face in the next decade in Plaquemines Parish. This is going to affect Plaquemines, not only Plaquemines Parish, but St. Bernard also. What I'm going to show you in this presentation is not speculation. It's actual graphs, photographs, charts, some from USGS, Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, and actually the only computer modeling you will see in here is actually CPRA and Corps of Engineers computer modeling. What I'm going to show you here is the reason why President Cormier is concerned, members of the fishing community are very concerned, and why you should be concerned too. Not only what it's going to do to our fishing industries, but what it's going to do economically to this parish as well as St. Bernard Parish. Before we go into the presentation, you've all heard the marketing campaign and the romantic notion that we have to reconnect the river to the marsh because that's how the delta was built. And while you may believe that river diversions may be the cure for our coastal issues, I'm going to be like the old Paul Harvey newscaster. You're going to see the other side of the story, one that you don't hear from the CPRA in the state. Let's get started. Louisiana is the most productive fishery in the Gulf. The shrimp, oyster, and crab industries account for over 20,000 jobs in Louisiana. Whether you know it or not, Plaquemines is a home to the largest commercial fishing fleet in the lower 48 states and accounts for 70% of the state's commercial landings, shrimp, oysters, crabs, and fish. Our commercial fishing statistics in Plaquemines, this is the year 2016. Saltwater fish, there were 308 producers, over 2 million pounds of landings, over $1 million of value. Shrimp, 657 producers, $20 million of value, 20 million pounds, $30 million in value. Oysters, 313 producers, 3 million pounds, 24 million, a total of over 1,278 producers with landing value of over $56 million annually to this parish. If you look here at the total economic impact of the fisheries industries, this is by the region, Orleans, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, and the region. I want you to pay special attention, ladies and gentlemen, to the state and local taxes. There's $43 million annually to this parish from our fisheries. I know this parish, as well as other parishes, have economic woes. Can you afford that kind of hit to your economic base? And the reason why it's in danger and why we're going to lose it, you're looking at here the Mid-Barrier Terrace sediment diversion. This is the project details of the project. It's going to be built at a cost of $1.3 billion and have a flow of 75,000 cubic feet a second. Now, to put that in perspective, the largest two diversions that we have in operation right now is Davis Pond, which is only 10,000 cubic feet a second, and the Carnarvon diversion at 8,000 cubic feet a second. Here's the footprint of the diversion, as you see just north of Ironton. There's many engineering details that had to be carried out. They had to relocate the railroad tracks. They had to do the bridge to the structure. But this is the footprint of the project. Now, time frame wise, the environmental impact study could be completed as soon as the fall of 2020. Engineering design a little bit earlier than that. So technically, they could start construction in the fall of 2020. Now, there is a little deception involved, you know, when you hear the operational regime of these diversions. While it seems, well, you know, tolerable that the CPRA says, well, we're going to operate these things only when the river's at 1 million cubic feet a second at 75,000 maximum. But what you don't see in the fine print, year round, they're going to run this thing at base flow of 5,000 cubic feet a second, year round. Year round, 5,000. Carnarvon is only 8,000 cubic feet a second. They're going to run it at 5,000 year round. Now, here's what the operation regime says. The maximum capacity will only be occurred during infrequent instances when the Mississippi River is flowing at high river stages of approximately 1 million cubic feet a second or more. Now, that sounds like, oh, well, we're not going to run it that much. Okay, infrequent. That's the term you have to pay attention to. I'm going to show you how infrequent that is. This is a USGS chart of the Mississippi River flow at Belle Chase, at which point they're going to gauge how they're going to operate this diversion. What you see here is this past year from February 3rd to August the 28th. That red line you see is how long they could have operated the diversion at maximum flow. Is that infrequent to you? That's 60 consecutive days. Now, the present diversion we have at Carnarvon, we know, you know, we've seen what the present diversions have done. This is the Delacroix area. This aerial photograph was taken courtesy of Standard Map in 1998. You see the landmass that was located in the Delacroix area. You see up in the upper left-hand corner is the diversion outfall from Carnarvon. Now, this is only 8,000 cubic feet a second. This diversion went in operation in 1991. For the first 5 years, they operated it correctly. They would open up for a certain period of time till the salinity levels got to where it was supposed to be, and then they would shut it down completely. In 1995, they started operating it at full capacity, not full capacity, but year-round. They constantly flowed the diversion and flooded the marsh with river water. This is what happened. This is what it looked like in 2011. I'm going to show you that again. Before, after. Scientists have studied what happened. This was after Hurricane Katrina. You think it happened in 13 years, what it says 1998 to 2011. No, it happened virtually overnight when Hurricane Katrina came in. There you see August and September of 2005. That's Landsat photographs. We lost 42 square miles of wetlands overnight when Katrina came in. They did scientific studies to find out why that happened, and what they attributed it to was the fresh water and the nutrient load of the Mississippi River water from the Carnarvon diversion flooding the brackish water marsh and affecting the root systems that couldn't stand up the storm surge after, and the land rolled up like a carpet. As you see here, this was land marsh that's influenced by the Carnarvon diversion after Hurricane Gustav. It was virtually wiped out. What you see in the bottom photograph is marsh that's not affected by the river water in the Delacroix area after Hurricane Katrina. It was still there. Now, this is the Corps of Engineers chart. You see the red. That was land loss after Hurricane Katrina. That yellow line you see is the I path of Hurricane Katrina. You see the red is wetland loss. It was all in the vicinity of the Carnarvon diversion. You see the green on the right of your screen, that's high salinity wetlands that were not affected by the storm surge. This is an expanded view of it. This is from a study of hurricane-induced land loss that you have a copy of in your packet, by the way. The blue line is the eye of Hurricane Katrina. Every mass of red that you see on this map was land loss after Hurricane Katrina. And it's all influenced by river water. You see the poster child for diversion, the Wax Lake on the left, suffered land loss, the Birdsfoot Delta. Anywhere that was influenced by river water sustained land loss. Now, why, that blue line, as I said, is the I path. Why did, above Mr. Go, you see on the map, why didn't that suffer land loss? You know, river water wasn't a problem. We have over 5 natural crevasses that flow 24/7. Over 450,000 cubic feet a second flow through these 5 natural crevasses. And they're also suffering the most land loss in the state. Now, we talk about the river water like, oh, fresh water. They call it fresh water. We're going to flow fresh water. Okay, is the river fresh water? Yes, we drink it. It's treated. But here's a study that was done by Environment Missouri. In 2010, there was over 12.7 million pounds of toxic chemicals dumped into the Mississippi River. Nitrates, arsenic, benzene, and mercury. The nitrates are what cause the dead zone in the Gulf every year. This is what the dead zone looks like. Now, I gave a presentation to BISCO a couple of years ago, and I had a high school student that asked me, is any state on the Gulf Coast suffering more land loss than Louisiana? Louisiana has 43% of the coastal wetlands in the United States, yet we suffer 93% of the land loss. Why is that? Could that be a problem? You see the red. No other Gulf Coast state suffers that much land loss. And what do we have that every other state doesn't have? The Mississippi River. The dead zone, as we talk about, every year we have a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. Dr. Denise Reed, I had an argument with her years ago. She was then head of the audience to the Gulf and said dead zones couldn't form in shallow water. Chandelier and Breton Sound are virtually shallow estuaries, and every year they have a hypoxic zone. This is a map from Louisiana Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation, and it shows 2 dead zones that formed between June 13th and 23rd of 2013. The same time frame these 2 dead zones formed, that's what we had in Chandelier Sound. We had a massive fish kill, all bottom fish, redfish, drum. Now, the state knows there's going to be impacts. I mean, it's common sense. May 22nd, the head of the CPRA was here in Plaquemines Parish at the PABI meeting, and this was his quote. Obviously, yes, if we have too much fresh water, you have no more oysters. That's just common sense. Well, we know that, Mr. Bradbury. We've seen what's happened. This is a oyster stock assessment from Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. This is CSA 1 South, which was once the most productive oyster seed grounds in the country, not just the state. 80% of the public seed oysters used to come from this area. Bay Gardine, American Bay, Bay Crab. You see the bottom right-hand corner, 2011, Mardi Gras Pass came to be. Started dumping river water into that area. And since then, we've lost that public oyster seed ground. Let's talk about shrimp. This is the latest Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries shrimp landings data. 2017, the brown and white shrimp accounted for over $133 million to the state. Of that $133 million, $22.2 million was just the brown shrimp. Now, anyone in the shrimp industry knows brown shrimp is the first season. Now, of that $22.2 million, 42%. 40% came from Barataria Bay. Now, that's $9 million annually, gentlemen, comes out of Barataria Bay to this Plaquemine, to this parish. Now, why we're going to lose it? This is why we're going to lose it. This is actual computer models from the Corps of Engineers. You see the two logos on the bottom, CPRA and the Corps of Engineers. This is their own computer modeling of what the salinity is going to be in Barataria Bay with the diversion. On the lower right-hand corner, that's the year 2020 from April to June with the Mid-Barataria diversion in operation. Barataria Bay is totally fresh all the way to Grand Isle. Talk about Carnarvon. During the oil spill in 2010, Carnarvon was operated, now this is 8,000 cubic feet a second. It was operated from April the 29th to August the 5th at 8,000 cubic feet a second. To give you an idea of what only 8,000 cubic feet a second does to salinity levels. The graph at the bottom is Four Horse Lake. You see the salinity levels in a matter of days went to 0. Now, how far is Four Horse Lake from the Carnarvon outfall? Carnarvon outfall is up in the left-hand corner. This is how much of that area was turned fresh in a matter of 3 to 4 days. 16 miles. Now, it's only 8,000 cubic feet a second. Can you imagine what 75,000 cubic feet a second is going to do? 3 days later, all the way to American Bay was totally fresh. That's a distance of 23 miles. We first started the Save Louisiana Coalition in 2013, and I went around and started giving these presentations, and people were telling me I was Chicken Little. I didn't know what I was talking about. I was crying wolf, that all of our concerns weren't warranted, that I didn't know what I was talking about. I was just a charter captain. Well, in June of 2013, the National Marine Fisheries Service wrote this letter to the CPRA and mirrored every concern that I had raised. The biggest part of this letter, the most important part, says this is their concerns with the Mid-Barataria diversion at 75,000 cubic feet a second. Their concerns were, 1, to displace marine fishery species from currently productive habitats to less supported habitats. 2, reduce marine fisheries productivity. 3, convert essential fish habitat, which the Barataria Basin is, to areas no longer supportive of some federally managed marine fishery species and their prey items. Render wetlands impacted by diversion more susceptible to erosion from storms, degrade water quality, and 6, the most important one, cause socioeconomic hardship to those involved in the commercial and recreational fishing industries. And I've shown you what these commercial fishing industries mean to your parish tax-wise, not even getting into the recreational fishing. Now, Water Institute of the Gulf had hired a scientific panel, expert scientific panel on diversions. They had a series of 7 meetings. And each one of these meetings, the CPRA presented findings and studies. The panel report on every one of these meetings stressed uncertainties. Uncertainties due to the absence of land building analogs. Uncertainties to ecological outcomes. Uncertainty in social and economic outcomes. And design and operational uncertainties. Their final recommendation was it needs more study. It needs more study. Yet they're going to fast track this diversion. They claim that diversions are more economical in the long run. Okay, we get more bang for the buck with the diversion. Here's was a study that was done by Rex Caffrey from LSU and 2 other PhDs that said no, over a 50-year period, dredging is actually more economical to diversion when you take into consideration the economic impact of the diversions. Chris Wazinski, U.S. Geological Survey. It seems everyone is just taking for granted the slogan, put the river back in the marsh, is the key to addressing the problem, without ever going out in a scientific way to find out what they would do. It's inconceivable to me that that would happen, but apparently it has. Now, this was a study done by Gary Brown with the Corps of Engineers. It also says that operation of diversions tend to freshen the entire basin, but the most important part of this study, significant land loss is expected to continue with or without these diversions. Now, what are we going to get? What you see here, that little blue dot, hypothetically, that's how much land you're going to get in 45 years at 45,000 cubic feet a second, run 365 days, 7 days a week. is it worth it? What you see here, that's the Shell Island East project. They had a bulldozer running on land in 4 days where it was open water. That's what we can do. Now you have to ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, if diversions are the cure to our coastal issues, what good is the medicine if it kills the patient? Any questions? I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Captain. Any questions from the table, comments from the table right now? I think we have one more presentation to follow up on yours. Mr. Savastano, we can go to that presentation if you want to. I'm sure you'll stick around if there's any questions. Ms. Toops, are we prepared for that one?
Some help.
They ready?
Not working.
I'm sorry. Okay. If we could, if we try to limit it to around 10 minutes, hopefully. Captain Ricks, we gave a little extra, about 20 minutes, so is there a,
It's up there, but how do you get on here? You remember what he said?
is it limited to 10 minutes? I gave him 20.
It's right here. No, the whole screen, you can't use the thing without the whole screen being up.
This is how we had it earlier, I believe.
We had to hold on.
Oh, hold on.
You had to run.
Here you go.
All right, you're on.
Good afternoon. I'd like to add a little bit to Captain Rick's presentation. First of all, it's the Myrtle Grove diversion is going to be a complete failure, period. The data is, the handwriting is on the wall. He's presented enough information to show you that it's not going to be successful. The real problem is high volumes of water into a brackish saltwater estuary, both sides of the rivers. What that does to the estuary, number one, he showed you that it's going to run the salinities to zero to Grand Isle. The immediate result is what the fishermen are concerned with. The fisheries are destroyed immediately. So it's not going to take long. All of the marine resources, the adults, they're going out in the Gulf, if they can move fast enough. The oysters can't move. They're dead. They're dead immediately. The nursery ground as a habitat is turned into fresh water, so you won't get any shrimp larvae coming in and produced. That's gone. So that's all essential fishery habitat for shrimp. Magnuson-Stevenson Act protects that. It's going to be totally destroyed. So it's a violation of the Magnuson-Stevenson Act. Now, the CPRA, the first thing they're going to tell you, what George said, they're connecting the river to the marshes because that's the way the delta was built. They're not going to tell you there's only 1/4 of the silt in the river that it used to be, and we have all the pollutions, heavy metals, fertilizers, and so on, which causes dead zones and all the other criteria, which I'm not going to get into. The important thing is they tell you we're going to build marsh. We're going to put sediment out there, we're going to build marsh and restore the wetlands. Okay, and by building marsh, we're going to reduce storm surge and reduce flooding, which is just opposite what's going to happen. What you have in the Barataria Bay is salt marsh at the lower regions, brackish marsh in the middle to upper regions. Salt and brackish marsh takes 5 to 15 parts salinity, salt marsh takes 16 plus parts salinity. Both of them have deep root systems. The physics, which we'll see later, is the fact that these deep root systems have soil strength which exceeds the storm stress forces by hurricanes. Fresh marsh has shallow root systems, and the soil strength is less than what the storm stress is, so it's rolled up and washed away. So when you put all this, run the salinity down to zero, you're going to kill the brackish and salt marsh, which is resilient in a storm environment. And what you're going to grow? Be it so, you're going to put a lot of sediment out there. It's being transported by high volumes of water. But what you're going to grow on it, after you kill the brackish and salt marsh, you're going to grow fresh marsh. And on the new sediment you're putting out there, you're going to grow fresh marsh. What's going to happen? We're in a storm environment. First storm comes along, the soil strength is less than the storm stress. It's going to roll it up. You're going to have open water from Grand Isle all the way up. Now, is that going to knock down storm surge? Absolutely not. It's going to increase storm surge. Is it going to decrease flooding? Absolutely not. It's going to increase flooding. So everybody sitting behind the wall in Belchas, look out. It's coming if you put the big divergence in. Now, I'm going to give you a presentation, and George already gave you a lot of presentation of the science behind that. All the uncertainties that the panel has suggested, we have certainties, not uncertainties. They didn't do the research to find out what's certainly going to happen. We did. So with that, we'll go on to the presentation. Now, I'll give you a volume, for example. At 8,000 cubic feet at Carnarvon, you're putting about 5 billion gallons of water in 24 hours into the Britton Sound estuary. At 75,000 cubic feet per second, you're putting 48.6 billion gallons of water into Barataria Bay. And one day, now we're going to run this thing, how many? 135 days or some ridiculous amount, 4 or 5 months? George showed you what happened on the east side of the river at 8,000 for the oil spill. In 60 days, ran the salinity down to zero, killed every oyster on the inside, on that side of the river. It's been dead for since 2010. The people in Point Lahash hadn't made a living, hadn't picked a sack of oysters. Talk about the culture impact, tremendous. You're going to see the same thing on this side of the river. That's why these fishermen are very, very concerned about this. You're going to have mass destruction. Now let's get into the presentation. I'll give you the science of exactly what happened. I'll skip this first slide. The things you want to remember is 3 things. Britton Sound and Barataria estuaries are brackish saltwater environments. Number 2, both are located in a storm environment. We're in a storm environment. The state can't stop the storms. We're going to get them. Both contain brackish and salt marsh, which can survive the pressures of storm surge. Fresh marsh can't. It results in open water. And again, this is a similar map to what George had, but this is a satellite image in 1990 prior to Carnarvon. If you look at this map, you'll see, find this. All of the area was identified by the Corps engineers as the influence area about the Carnarvon Diversion, which is located right there. If you notice, the marsh is pretty much comparable out here as it is in here. And oh, that's 2008, I'm sorry. 1990, there's 1990. The marsh is pretty much comparable in there. What happened is we started, as George said, in 1995, This thing was designed to enhance oysters and to stop the predators on oysters by putting fresh water in, to reduce the salinities, run the oyster conchs off the oyster drills, off the oyster reefs. They started to run it to build land, which it wasn't designed, and the Corps engineers told them. But they started running heavily because they spent $26 million putting it in, and they wanted to run it to get the maximum results. Well, it wasn't designed for land. So what happened? This is what happened very rapidly. You're going to watch the land disappear to 2008. You're rapidly seeing the land disappear as it goes away. Now you see what happened. I want to point out something. If I can get the cursor up here. Okay. Well, it's gone away again. Anyway, if you look at the lower right-hand corner, you'll see the area that's offshore, that's salt and brackish marsh. If you look at the area that's called the influence area, that used to be brackish marsh. Something happened. The majority of the damage looked like it was in the influence area, which is where Carnarvon influenced. Let's go on, and that's starting to tell you a little bit about what's happening and what's causing the damage. I was told, number one, that we had the same kind of damage prior to Carnarvon from the storms. So I went back, and since we had Hurricane Betsy and Camille in 1956 to 1990, we had a land loss of about 350 acres per year. And I went and got the data from 1990 to 2008. We only had Katrina, and we had a land loss, our average land loss of 967 acres per year. Almost three times the land loss. Well, that's during the time that they put Katrina in. So another thing pointing to the fact that Katrina, the Carnarvon is one of the causes of the land loss. Why? Why is that? We have to get the answer to that. So here's three areas. 1990 to 2004, it looked good. The influence area, it looked like we had a 1% increase. And then in 1990 to 2008, boom, we had 36% loss. And then we go to 2004 to 2008, Katrina at 2005. 36.8%, all of it attributed to Katrina. They were right. The storm caused the damage. But why? Again, if we look where we had salt marsh, before Katrina, we lost about 3%. After all the way out to 2008, we had about a 12% loss versus a 36% loss. Again, telling that salt and brackish marsh is more stable in a storm environment. Again, this is from the USGS. Fresh marsh, in all of Louisiana, we lost 122 square miles. Intermediate marsh, which is fresh, we lost 90 square miles. Brackish marsh, we only lost 33 square miles, and saline marsh, 28 square miles. Some more data that tells you salt and brackish marsh is the kind of marsh you want in your estuary. Again, you saw this slide. Basically, you see where Katrina passed. You see the biggest damage areas, Chafalaya, Britton Sound, the Carnarvon area, and the mouth of the river. Fresh water, fresh marsh, maximum damage. Again, fresh marsh, most damage. What caused it? The 5-part salinity line on the upper right-hand corner was moved to Point LaHash. The 15-part salinity line was flushed out in Black Bay. So the high volume of water reduced the salinities, which is going to do in Barataria Bay. What happened? The upper corner in 1988, that red stuff is brackish marsh. By 2000, the green stuff replaced the red stuff. The green stuff is fresh marsh. By 2000, 2005, Katrina came, wiped out the fresh marsh. That's where the tremendous loss was. Again, You look at the map, you see all the damage in the area up on the left-hand side, and under the red area you see intermediate fresh marsh. And if you look at the right side of it, you see salt marsh, you see Katrina path. The Katrina didn't destroy the salt marsh, it destroyed the fresh marsh. So, introducing Mississippi River freshwater has significantly reduced the salinity. The lower salinity is converted again the marshes to fresh marsh, and then the storms eliminated. The storm surge eliminated it. Essentially, on the east side of the river, 500,000 acres of essential fishery habitat is destroyed. There is no fishery on the east side of the river all the way down to Point Lahash and below. It's gone. Exactly what's going to happen in Barataria Bay, and that's why the fishermen are so concerned. I won't go into all the nutrients and the fertilizer. You know the fertilizer coming down the river causes dead zones. We're introducing dead zones into the estuary. We're introducing pollution into the estuary, heavy metals. All of that's introduced. Invasive species. We'll introduce water hyacinths, which totally block up all your canals, your lakes, and everything else. It makes them totally unusable. Finally, again, what causes the damage? Low salinity, and this is from a scientific paper by Howes, Culp, and John Barris. The bottom line tells you low salinity wetland has something like 500 to 1,450 Pascal units, which is force per square meter, that it can stand. Storm stress is 425 to 3,600 Pascal units, exceeds the heck out of low salinity soil strengths, therefore it's washed out. High salinity has 4,500 Pascal units, which exceeds the storm stress forces. Therefore, that's why high salinity marsh, brackish and salt marsh, is not washed out. This is documented from scientists. And their conclusion was fresh water to marshes as part of a restoration effort weakens existing wetlands rather than vulnerable to hurricanes. And that's what you're going to get. I can go on to the solution. The Meggs-Stevens Act says in order, if you start an operation that destroys the essential fishery wetlands, you have to either change the operation and restore it, number one, or you have to generate that number of acres somewhere else out in the country. We've destroyed 500,000 acres on the east side of the river. They're not going to generate that somewhere else in this country. That's impossible. So we need to restore it. How are we going to restore it? Stop these fresh water from going in, restore the salinity regime, grow brackish marsh on the upper regions and the estuary, salt marsh on the lower regions, do dredging, put new sediment out there and grow the proper marsh, which is resilient in the storm environment, knocks down storm surge, reduces flooding. That's the way to do it. That's the way we have to do it on the east side of the river right now, because we're destroyed. We still have a chance on the west side of the river. You still have brackish and you still have salt marsh. Keep running Davis Pond the way you're running it. It's going to do exactly what Carnarvon did on the east side of the river. It's starting to do it right now. The upper regions around all the way down to Lafitte is being destroyed. It's converting the marsh and turning it into open water. If you keep running that without even putting the big diversions, it's going to run it all the way down to Grand Isle, just like it ran to Point Lahash. It's going to destroy it. We have a little bit salt marsh in Point Lahash right now. You're concerned about Mardi Gras Pass. It's wiping out the salt marsh in Point Lahash right now, which means we'll have fresh marsh all the way from Carnarvon to Point Lahash. The next storm that comes through, open water all the way. All that fresh marsh that was converted from Grand Lake up to Carnarvon, that's open water right now. I'll give you an idea. For Katrina, we had 30 feet at Point Lahash. We had 16 feet at Carnarvon, storm surge. Knocked down, attenuated the storm surge by 14 feet. Okay? We had all the destruction to the marsh based on converting it to fresh and destroying it in open water. When Isaac came along, we had 15 feet at Point Lahash. We had 13.6 at Carnarvon. It only attenuated the storm surge by 1.4 feet, where it did 14 feet for before. That's what the marsh does. It knocks down storm surge. So what are we going to do? We're going to put all this high-volume river water into estuary, into Barataria Estuary. We're going to convert the marsh, turn it into fresh, destroy it, open water, and whatever you get, a storm surge at Grand Isle, you're going to get it on the levees at Belchaz. And there's the signs. End of conversation. Do you have any questions?
I do. Would you please elaborate? Hold on, Mr.
Diversion, the natural diversion at Fort St. Philip over the number of years that it was in existence?
Okay, I went and got, oh, by the way, all this data comes from the USGS. You can get the reports and get all the things, and from the Corps of Engineers. In fact, the database that I'm citing all the numbers from, this was paid for by the Corps of Engineers, and the USGS generated that from Landsat satellite data. And we have the database. I have it for the east side, but that same database exists for the west side of the river. Somebody needs to get that and go back and analyze it from the time right before they put in Davis Pond to now, to see what Davis Pond has done to you guys on the west side of the river. It's available. Now, to answer John's question, we got the data. They keep saying the levees stop the water from going over and rebuilding the wetlands. So we wanted to look at what happened down from Bohemia to Batiste Colette. We don't have very much levees, very little. We have Fort St. Phillips that puts in 100,000 cubic feet per second when the river's high. We have Batiste Colette, 90,000 cubic feet per second. So we got, quote, natural diversions. And I think George alluded to the total volume. Right now, we have more than 250,000 cubic feet per second coming in on the east side of the river based on diversions and crevasses. That's more than you have at Bonacare Spillway open, wide open, which is 250,000 cubic feet. So every day we're getting more water into the east side of the river, this river water with fertilizers and pollutants and everything else, and converting our marsh right now than we get if we had the Bonacare Spillway open. So we have destruction going on immediately, and you got it on the west side too. So we need to not only stop these big diversions, we need to regulate the little ones and control the crevasses that we have, or we won't have a parish very long. Just that simple. Now, to go back to John's question, we have no levees, and we've had a lot of volume, and since 1985, I had the satellite data to look at how much land we had in 1985 in water from Bohemia to Batiste Colette. And then I got the data for 2010. That's 25 years. And you would think without levees and that kind of water going from the river that we would have built land. I mean, that's what the big diversions are supposed to do. Well, in that time span, 25 years with no levees and all of this fresh water coming from the river and fairly deep to get the heaviest silt from the bottom, we actually lost 2,000 acres. So we didn't gain land, we didn't build land, we actually lost land. And the other thing I think is important, if you do nothing, which the CPRA says, you're going to have nothing in 50 years. Well, if you look at this increasing the rate of loss, if you put these diversions in, we already can show that it increased the rate of loss by a factor of 300%. So if we put that in here and we increase the rate of loss, we're going to have nothing a lot faster than if we do nothing. But we're not going to do anything. What can we do to really solve this problem? Dredge. Put the sediment out there without the high volumes of water. Without the high volumes of water, you'll keep the salinities in a proper range for growing the right marsh, which will knock down storm surge and decrease flooding. There's the solution. You won't get all the pollution, the dead zones, the fertilizer. None of that will go in with dredging because you're putting very little water. And there's the solution. Now, they keep telling us dredging costs more than diversions. But in the master plan, there's $20 billion for dredging, which is a significant amount of money out of the $50 billion. If dredging is so bad, why are we going to spend $20 billion in the rest of the state to do dredging and not satisfy Plaquemines and do the 2.4 billion or 5 billion that we have for that, and do that in Plaquemines and avoid all the problems and retain our fisheries? That's a renewable resource fisheries. Every year we make that much money. If we put that diversion in, we kill the fisheries and it's gone forever. Your tax money, the people working, all that's lost. And it's lost every year. Okay, if we do dredging, that's not lost. So what's telling us to go do diversions? Nothing. They tell us it costs more to do dredging per acre than diversions. Give us the computations, give us the dollar value per acre, and tell us how you computed that. Then let us discuss whether it's more costly or less. I think dredging is significantly less costly because you don't destroy all of these resources, renewable resources, every year that you're making money. If you count all the resources that you're destroying for 50 years and add that to diversions and subtract it from dredging, dredging becomes very, very inexpensive with respect to diversions for building land. So they won't tell you the whole story. They're not telling us the whole story. Give us the facts. Don't just give us a presentation where you build a big, massive diversion, construction, and this is what we're doing, and this is what it's going to do. It's going to connect the river to the marshes, and we're going to decrease storm surge, and we want to decrease flooding. Fallacies. Spin. Okay? Now you got the data. You can use it any way you want. And you'll get some pro-diversion people in here. Ask them to give you the science that documents what they're telling you. I don't see any signs coming out of CPRA. I see comments, subjective comments. Give us the signs. That's what you need to request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savastano. I appreciate it. I think we do have some questions from the table.
Mr. Savastano.
And thank you, Captain, as well. And I'm glad you ended your conversation, Mr. Savastano, with that, because I think that's what I've been asking for as well, is to see the science. And we have not. So I do agree with you there. Ms. Solvent is up now. She has a comment?
Yeah.
You're on.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a quick comment. First of all, I want to applaud the fishing industry and the fishermen that's adamantly fighting and going up against the diversion. I applaud you. I support you. I think it's a worthwhile cause and it's worth fighting for. But there's one question that comes to mind for me. If Mr. Savastano would come back to the mic, I would like to know his personal opinion. Why do you feel that CPRA and all these other entities is ignoring all of the scientific data, or suppressing all of the data that's coming forth from you guys? I've been in you guys' companies many a times, and the evidence is there. It's there. Why are they ignoring it?
I suspect, and I'll give you what I think is the reason. We have something in the neighborhood of $6 billion coming in from the BP oil spill, and it's dedicated for two functions: to build barrier islands and to build diversions. It can't be used for anything else. So the state is going to get a significant portion of that $6 billion to build diversions. And if they don't build diversions, they're going to have to use it on barrier islands. And they'd like to use it on diversions because the spin is they're going to do all these things and create land at a cheaper rate, which they won't give us the data on that. So we need to get the data. Now, why are they doing that? Because they're going to hire engineering companies. And these engineering, I think you can put it together from here, can't you?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Cormier?
Yes. I want to thank Mr. Ken Savastano. He's too humble a man. He didn't state his credentials. Mr. Savastano was a a physical scientist employed by the National Marine Fisheries Service, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration under the United States Department of Commerce. He also was a scientist for a while with NASA. So just because we're lucky enough to have him as a local resident in Plaquemines, I don't want anyone to think, because of his humility, that you know, the old trick is, well, if they're an expert, they come down from far away. No, Mr. Savastano has all the credentials, and Captain Ricks's efforts can't be, all of his hard work can't be understated. So I thank both of them because they have educated me on this issue, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. Mr. Bartholomew?
Yes. They're not on anybody's salary. They're not paid by this council. They're not paid by the state of Louisiana. They're not paid by any group. This is people that loves Louisiana, people that loves Plaquemine Parish, people that love St. Bernard, people that respect the fishing industry. It's people that works in that industry. Those people are committed to bring a life that was lost back into commerce on their efforts. So you see, they're not getting paid. So we can't say anybody paying them because they're not, because they don't want to hear this. So what I'm saying is, it's not too often we get knowledgeable people that know the science of what works. Not making assumption, not making opinion, but scientific data that proves what works. And to the two gentlemen, I really appreciate you, and I respect you 100%, or maybe 1,000, whatever, beyond for your commitment in making this fight a vulnerable opponent to the other side, because they don't know. You do. Thank y'all very much. That's all.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Lapine?
Mr. Ricks, Mr. Savastano, thank you for your presentation today. I actually sat through your presentation when you had at the auditorium, and it was my intent that all council members should hear this information. That night, when you opened my eyes and presented your information that night, and it's very overwhelming. It was a lot more intense that night. We have a lot more information that was presented. This was a kind of condensed version, but I just want to thank you for your constant awareness that you bring to us. This is not just a Plaquemines issue. This is also a St. Bernard issue. And I want to recognize a professional courtesy. There is a St. Bernard Councilman at Large, Kerry Colley, in the audience. Thank you, Kerry, for being here. Welcome to Plaquemines Parish. But Councilwoman, I apologize, Kerry. But thank you for being here. But it affects all of us. And again, thank you for your presentation. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Juneau?
Yes, sir. I'd like to thank Mr. Savastano and Mr. Ricks and all the fishermen that's here. This opened up my eyes, because I've been asking CPRA for the past year, what are they going to do to help Plaquemines Parish? What is this going to do to help us? They keep, like you say, they keep pushing it off. They also say that they're only going to open it up 40 days a year. Now, you know, I'm just as confused as y'all are. I ask them, why are you going to do something to hurt the fishermen in Plaquemines, Jefferson, and everywhere? They can't give me that answer because they say they're not going to hurt you. But I see, after all these comments, that y'all the true people and they not. Thank you.
All right, if we have no other further comments, 1 second, from the table, I'm going to open up for public comment. Before I do, as you can see, we have spent over an hour on this topic. I think it's been well needed. I think everybody on the council deserved the opportunity, like Mr. Lapine said, to hear some facts. And like Mr. Savastano duly pointed out, to provide us with some science. So I do appreciate that. We're going to try to keep the public comments to around 2 minutes per person. I'm not sure how many people are up to speak, but if you respect that, I appreciate it. Once again, I think this was a very good presentation by both Captain Ricks and Mr. Savastano. We have one final comment, I believe, from the table, Ms. Salvant, and then we'll turn it over to public comment. Ms. Salvant?
Yes, I forgot to mention early on to Captain Ricks. I want to thank you for acknowledging in your opening statement you referred to the location of the diversion as north of Ironton. I can appreciate you using that terminology, even though it may affect everybody, but we are in the closest proximity. The community of Ironton will be in the closest proximity of that diversion than anyone else. So I can appreciate your comment, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence, it's open for public comment now.
Yes, Warren Lawrence, 120 Timber Canal Lane, Myrtle Grove. And what Ms. Audrey just said, the closest community to this diversion that's on the seaside is Myrtle Grove. We have for 2 years now tried to give information from CPRA. We already had 3 meetings with them to what is the effect it's going to have on our community as far as flooding. What is the hydraulic study that's going to show what will the elevation of the water be in our subdivision when they open this diversion? They had not done a hydraulic study, and they were going to get one done. It still hadn't been done. The only thing we're saying is if that diversion was operating today at the river level it's at, we couldn't get to our homes. That's what the estimated elevation of that water would be at Myrtle Grove when that river diversion is operated. Right now, when you open at Carnarvon with only 8,000 CFS, you're talking about a 2-foot elevation of water. The tide can't even come in. It's making more water. If we had it at 8,000 and we got 2 foot, we'd be semi-flooded. But if it comes at this rate, there's no way we can even attempt to live there. I'm just asking that in behalf that the President, our councilman, get with the CPRA, and say what is the adverse effect it's going to have on a community that was there before the diversion. And if it's going to affect us in this manner, then take part of their billions and buy us out. Because not only will it raise the elevation, I can also see us having fish kills, contaminated water, and everything else deposited on Myrtle Grove and Wood Park. And this is not acceptable. You know, if you can give us we tried to get a hydraulic study on the effect of surrounding us with a levee from the Corps. We've never gotten that. And I guess we'll never get it from the CPRA. We will learn that we got to have a boat to go to our houses. Those parish streets will be underwater. Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Bartholomew?
Yes, Mr. Lawrence, you can use the analogy of the effects of the diversion the Mardi Gras Pass would have did for Point LaHash area, destroyed a community. It destroyed a way of life. That's evidence. That's facts. So just tell them that.
Thanks, sir.
I also want to thank Reverend George for his presentation. And I heard Mr. Lapine say his eyes is open, and that's great. For 10 years, this conversation just didn't start yesterday. We had a meeting at the Reverend Griffin Community Center where most of the people here were there. People came all the way from Terrebonne Parish and Seminole Parish to talk about this issue. The question is, now that you see, what you going to do? The question is, I heard Councilwoman Salvan when she talked, the one thing that she said that was the most important thing to the fishermen is that I support you. The fishermen don't want to hear about your eyes open. They want to know, do you support them? We thinking Mr. Lepine for taking on CPR, and we know this council bashed him about how he was in the news going against CPR. You shouldn't be disrespecting of that because he was on the side of the fishermen. And so we hope that this council, now that your eyes are open, you prove to this community by getting behind President Cormier and getting behind the fishermen and go against the governor and anybody else that's trying to bring this mid-barrier diversion into our community.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you back, Mr. Regas.
Sir. Ken Ragas, 1311 Holiday Place, New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm going to give you all a little data. I'm not a fisherman. My grandparents were. But I am more on the more technical and scientific side of this, and I did this little deal for y'all and had it passed out. Anyway, let me just give you the first piece here. Sediment diversion versus pumping, dredging and pumping, okay? The last project that was done on the West Bank that's been completed in 2017 was a Grand Deliort project. They pumped sand, not sand. We don't need sand. They pumped mud. What we need is mud. To do that project, and the bid for the mud was $6 a cubic yard by Weeks Marine. So the CPRA wants to use dredges in the river to compare this, where if you wonder where the land went, like you wonder where the yellow went, what didn't subside went out, and it's all along the Gulf. And there's I think the Corps of Engineers or USGS did a study and ran all along the bank, just 300 or 400 foot out, and did soil samples. And so the mud is there, but they don't want to admit that the $6 cubic yard would be the correct way to compare the diversions. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Regas.
Quick comment.
You will do what, Mr. Cormier?
Just a quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cormier.
Yeah, I just want to thank Mr. Ken Ragas as well. He provided a 52-year United States Army Corps of Engineers study of the Fort St. Philip diversion, which was posted, the abstract of which we put on our blackmansparish.com website. And so I want to thank him for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
How you doing? Asa Cooper, lifelong parish resident, president of Louisiana Shrimp Association. And we stand behind this because, look, the CPRA, they talk about it. The Corps of Engineers talks about it. We live it every day. You know, we run these marshes. We see what's happening. The Corps of Engineers is one of our biggest problems. They stopping up and the parish biggest problem. They let all our passes stop up, so we keep the commerce going out of Southwest Pass. And when they do that, then we can't get out our passes. You can't get commerce back to Venice. We have the recreational fishermen and the commercial fishermen, the shrimpers and the oysters and the finfish. This is our life. You know, Venice is dead now. If you take us out of the low end of this parish, the parish is gone. All you can have is the upper end. So I advise you to stand behind our parish president, and I like to commend him because he's the only one that ever stood up and said, hey, I think y'all right here. We need y'all behind us, and not behind us, in front of us, and help us push this fight to where it needs to be at. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Chairman, councilpersons, thank you so much for your patience and listening to all the information that everybody's brought to you today. You know, and I hate to say it this way, but if we told the state tomorrow that we were going to create a project that was going to eliminate 50% of oil and gas operations in the state of Louisiana, they would throw rotten tomatoes at us as we ran out of the room. But the state's coming to us saying that they want to implement a project, an experimental project into our parish that could eliminate 50% of the landings of the seafood that's landed in this state per year. we should be throwing tomatoes at them as they run out of the room. We shouldn't be the trade-off or the guinea pigs, or should I go ahead and call it what it is, the sacrifice. They keep sat here comments from people saying that, oh, well, the fishermen can just go a little bit further. And I love when they try to relate to us and tell me, oh, well, I went on the back of a boat and worked for my dad to work my way through college. Like they know what we deal with. They don't know what it is to maintain our vessels. I have 6 boats. They don't know what it is to maintain all of the equipment for those vessels, or to have to put a brand new GM or a Cummins or something, a big diesel motor in one of those boats whenever something breaks down. So for them to try to relate to us, to make it like we're friends, so that they can feed us with this with a knife and fork and have us ask for another, is a slap and a spit in the face. For them to come to our parish and try to use the fines that BP had to pay to further impact those that were originally impacted by that incident in 2010 is a direct slap in the face of everybody in this parish and the surrounding parishes, especially our fishermen. You know, I'm really grateful for you guys today because I see that most of you get it. I hope that all of you get it. Without the commercial fishermen in this parish, you know, what is it going to be? We're the longest, most sustainable industry that's ever existed in Plaquemines Parish. You know, and it goes beyond that. Let's go on beyond the commercial fishing families in this parish, and let's talk about the essential fishery habitat. Not only is a nursery home to too many species to list, but that provides, you know, the safety net for the species throughout the entire Gulf of Mexico. I was asked a few weeks ago if the few should outweigh the many by a reporter, to put me on the spot, to try to make me put our little few fishermen in their eyes above the many that this project is supposed to build land to protect. We're not the few, we are the many. We're the direct line of access to a natural resource. We provide a food source to our countrymen throughout this nation. And for too long, other people have painted and framed our picture and made it like we're just these greedy people that destroy everything in our path. And nothing could be further from the truth. We are the true conservationists. Because we have to have this industry year after year after year. This is how we feed our families. My father taught me not to throw so much as a Coke can in the bayou. This is my lifeblood. There's no place else in the world I'd rather be than Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana. And I ask you moving forward, we elected all you guys, somebody in your district, everybody came together, and it's your job to protect people in this parish. That's your job. We're asking you to do your job and to collectively come together, put party lines aside, work together, and protect the people's future of this parish, the whole parish. But keep in mind, this is not just about the commercial fishing industry. You've heard about the lack of the hydrology report. What happens when we elevate that water in the estuary and it comes up against our billion-dollar levee systems, saturates the bottom of our levee? We're going to negate every foot that we've raised those levees with that water level. What happens when we have a storm come into the south end of the Gulf and they haven't shut this thing down in time enough for all that extra water to evacuate our estuary? We're going to negate those extra feet that we've raised our levees. It's a very serious situation, and I really appreciate all of your time today. You guys have a blessed weekend. Thank you.
I don't think there's any better way than to conclude it with that presentation, Mr. Nelson. I really do appreciate you bringing this to the council's attention and putting it on the agenda. It was some good information. I want to also thank our council members for having the patience to go through and really dig into it and listen to what you guys had to say. I also want to thank Council Chair from St. Bernard, Ms. Calais. Thank you for coming. It does mean a lot to us as well that you have an appreciation for what we do in Plaquemines Parish. Thank the parish president. I would like to. Mr. Besham wants to speak? Oh. Cue in, Mr. Besham. I don't know you want to speak unless you tell me you want to speak. All right.
If anybody wants to see the true state of what's going to happen, all they have to do is go to Point Lahash, and they'll see there's not much going on at all. It is completely dead. Fishing-wise, trawling-wise, It's terrible. But one thing I want to leave you with is that in 3 years, you can pump in 25,000 acres. And in 20 years, you can, by diversion, and this is Barataria, in 20 years, you'll have approximately 5,000 acres. If you want to build land, just think about those numbers, 25,000 as opposed to 5,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beshel. With that, we will conclude. Thank you all for coming out for these presentations. We're going to move now to, let's get the opioid item off the agenda. And so I think we have some folks waiting on that. That is item 7G, I believe. All right.
What do you say?
I should tell them at the head to come.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, now we got, the opioid thing. Okay, I'm leaving.
I'm sorry? How long would you like it to be? I'd like 10 minutes, but I could take 5 if, okay.
We can start.
Okay. Council members, thank you for having me. My name is Madeline Brumley. I am an attorney at the Laborde Earls Law Firm. We have offices in Lafayette, Alexandria, and Marksville, and we have partnered with a law firm out of New York to bring suit against the pharmaceutical companies for their role in perpetuating the opioid crisis. We were the first in the state to file a lawsuit on behalf of sheriffs, and we have moved on to representing other government entities. So I'm here to tell you just a little bit about the origins of the opioid crisis and about the litigation that we've undertaken, and to just bring a little more light to this important public health issue. Our partners in New York are Simmons Hanley Conroy. They were the first in the nation to successfully bring a lawsuit against Purdue Pharmaceuticals for their false marketing of drugs like OxyContin. Since they brought that lawsuit, as you all know, there's been an explosion of opioid prescriptions, addiction, abuse, and overdose. And the National Institutes of Health has identified the drug companies' aggressive marketing as a major contributor to this opioid abuse epidemic. And we now have thousands of deaths due to opioid overdoses across the nation every year. There are more people that die of opioid overdoses than were dying every year at the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis, than died in the war in Vietnam, or that die annually due to car accidents. So this is, to say this is a huge public health issue, understates the severity of the crisis. It also has a huge economic burden. Nationally, annually, you'll see that we spend or lose about slightly under $80 billion per year as a result of this crisis. So the pharmaceutical companies who perpetuated this crisis are raking in billions of dollars a year, and that money, our tax dollars, are going to try to address it. I want to talk a little bit about how we got here. When opioids were originally approved by the FDA for use, they were understood to be highly effective drugs at doing a very limited number of things. They are appropriate for palliative end-of-life care, for cancer-related pain, and for post-surgical care. but that is a limited market. So what Purdue Pharmaceuticals and the other pharmaceutical companies did is they engaged in a multi-million-dollar campaign to change public perception and convince both, physicians and prescribers and the public that OxyContin and other highly addictive and dangerous narcotics were appropriate for the use in chronic pain. They did this despite the lack of evidence of the efficacy of opioids, and they did this despite a lack of research about the potentially addictive nature of opioids. There have now been studies that have come out that say for chronic pain, Tylenol, Advil, your basic over-the-counter NSAIDs are more effective or just as effective for chronic pain as OxyContin without the potential life-upending addiction and other impacts. I included this chart because you can see that as opioid sales, as a result of this marketing campaign, went through the roof, so did treatment admissions for addiction, and so did overdose deaths. These are a list of some of the defendants of our lawsuit. What these pharmaceutical companies did is basically polluted the entire stream of information that a physician would consider to be objective and rely upon when making a prescribing decision. They did that through front group messaging, targeting, marketing directly to physicians, and unbranded ad messaging. So these pharmaceutical companies would essentially buy and pay for what we're in our lawsuit refer to as front groups. These are entities that sound objective and independent. They purport to be patient advocacy groups, but often their sole source of funding will be one or a few of these pharmaceutical companies. So doctors, for example, would maybe not feel so comfortable about putting a pamphlet in their waiting room that says, talk to your doctor about whether opioids are right for you, sponsored by Purdue Pharmaceuticals. But the American Geriatric Society, the American Pain Foundation, those sound like independent patient advocacy groups. So the doctors believed that the information that they were getting from these groups was objective when it was effectively marketing from the pharmaceutical companies. In addition to disseminating these inaccurate marketing materials, they also marketed directly to doctors. The latest research shows that, with every one lunch bought by a pharmaceutical sales rep for a doctor is enough to change a doctor's prescribing habits to a statistically significant degree. And that rises with every next lunch or gift or conference that these doctors are invited to attend. They know doctors listen to other doctors. So there were a few doctors who they elevated to a national profile by giving them thousands and thousands of dollars in research grants and helping get their publications a wider audience. Those doctors, it's no surprise, were very supportive of the use of opioids for chronic pain. A lot of those doctors are now under federal investigation because their patients have died or have now admitted that they were essentially wrong the whole time. So they also marketed to doctors who don't necessarily have the expertise to in pain management. So remember again that these medications are only supposed to be used for cancer-related surgical care or end-of-life pain, but they're marketing to rheumatologists and OB-GYNs and dentists. They eventually did have internal research, which we know from Simmons, Hanley, Conroy's earlier lawsuits, that addiction risk and overdose risks are high, and that these medications can be fatal even when taken as prescribed. Despite this, they perpetrated the lie that less than 1% of chronic pain patients who take opioids become addicted. We know that this is absolutely false. I was also personally horrified to find out that they fabricated and peddled a concept called pseudo-addiction. They told doctors, if your patient who's on opioid pain medications for chronic pain is exhibiting behaviors that most of us would associate with addiction, it may not actually be addiction. It's probably a sign of undertreated pain, which you should treat with more opioids. So if your patient is hoarding pills or running through their scripts too quickly or supplementing the medications you're giving them with pills off the street or turning to heroin or other drugs for pain relief, don't try to wean them off their opioids. Don't get them counseling help. Just prescribe them more pain medications. We've also sued the drug distributors because these big companies that distribute pain medication have a duty under federal and state law to report suspicious orders to the DEA, and they were not. We know this because there weren't reports for suspicious orders in Louisiana, but in the past 10 years, in most of those years, Louisiana has had more opioid prescriptions written than we have residents in this state, which means that there are enough opioids in the state prescribed in a given year to medicate every man, woman, and child for more than a month. Our addiction rates are on the rise. Our overdose deaths are on the rise, especially as many people are turning from painkillers to more deadly drugs like heroin. And that has also fueled a rise in petty crime. So, like I said, we have filed suits on behalf of the sheriffs in 14 different parishes and been retained as counsel for 8 other parishes and several Indian tribes, and those lawsuits will be filed in the coming weeks. Really quickly, the impacts that it has on your parish budget are many. You'll have increased health care costs as a result of this opioid epidemic, your workman's comp, emergency response costs, family and social services costs, your court administration costs. So this basically has had a massive national impact that does trickle down to the local level. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have about the litigation or the opioid crisis. And here is my contact information.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I do want to say that we have met with some firms already, and one of the things that we've asked them to do is to give us specific data of what has been affected already, whether it's through our criminal justice system, to include our district attorney, our sheriff's office, the judiciary in its entirety, also our care center. What effects have they seen, and what impacts have we had to this parish? I mean, we have a small parish, it's a population of around 23,000. We do have a large number of suicides, so that was one of the questions that we had. But we've asked those folks to provide us with specific data, which would warrant us to get involved in any type of litigation.
Okay.
So I appreciate your presentation. Does anybody have any comments from the table? Any comments from the audience? Administration? None. Thank you for your presentation. Take care. All right, we'll move to the presidential address at this time. Mr. Cormier, give me 1 second. Mic's on, sir.
Thank you. For the record, this is the Plaquemines Parish President's Address. Name Amos Cormier for the dates May 24th, 2018 to June 14th, 2018. Wednesday, May 30th, met with some members of the Woodland Conservancy regarding the placement of bathrooms for that park, and we're moving forward in collaboration with them on that matter. On Thursday, May 31st, we attended the civil service meeting. Councilman Roussel attended the civil service meeting. My director of administration, Mr. James Peoples, I had a bit of a conflict. He did a great job of representing administration there. And I want to ask each and every one of you to support Councilman Roussel's ordinance or legislation to, I'll use the term, clarify the increase to the employees as to what it is. There were many ways, more than one way to skin a cat, but this way will avoid litigation and we'll get the increase to the employees. Well, there have been numerous meetings, ongoing negotiations with CPRA continues to reach out, and now after the fact, and we are talking with them, but it's from the context of we have a much better idea as to what the impacts could be to our parish and our residents, and so we will. There have been talks from CPRA's side of litigation, but we'll address those as they come along. On Wednesday, June 6th, had the meeting with Louisiana Safe, the Plaquemines Harbor Refuge meeting. We're proud to report that between the Plaquemines Parish Care Center, located here in Belle Chase, which is going to receive over $1 million, and the Safe Harbor, as we all heard in the presentations, Plaquemines has one of the largest commercial fleets in Louisiana, and this Safe Harbor will help protect that commercial fleet and all the investments in those assets in the event of a hurricane. These two projects will total about $8 million. So we're thankful to LA Safe, and we're working well with the Department of Office of Community Development in Baton Rouge. On Thursday, June 7th, we had a press conference on the Mid-Barataria diversion, and since we had wonderful presentations. I won't go in depth there other than to add that we did upload to plaquemisparish.com. It's under latest news now. It's called Hurricane-Induced Failure of Low Salinity Wetlands. This was one of the peer-reviewed National Academy of Sciences published studies, and that is on the website as well for those of you who want to read up more on that as to the effects or the potential acceleration of land loss with a freshwater diversion. On Monday, June 11th, I want to thank Council Members Roussel, Councilmember Juneau, Trufant, and Bartholomew for attending the pre-council meeting. Those pre-council meetings always help expedite things and clarify matters. We had a meeting on Wednesday, June 13th, but we've been in talks before then. There is ongoing repairs being made to the 20-inch water line that is located just south of the Port Suffolk YMCA. That line ruptured. Inframark contacted the state. DHH permitted to increase the water pressure, permitted the operation of the Bouffil Venice plant. We stabilized matters there, and work is being ongoing currently now to resolve that problem. One of the things we saw was that the crossing bars for that 20-inch main were in not the best of shape, and so maybe that the weight from the 20-inch line caused the problem, but I'll keep you updated as information comes in. We also began, and I want to thank the council for this, we began pedestrian ferry service. It was, I do think there's an agenda item later, but since there had been a delay, we began pedestrian ferry service with a crew boat, and that is during the pending time period in which we are trying to comply with all of the laws. We have advertised. That advertisement went out a week or two ago, and we hope to, I think it's the date's June 23rd, open bids to repair the dolphins pilings that hold the West Point Lahatch barge in place. We also signed during this week the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development Road Safety Program. We signed the entity state agreement with them. On the Port Sulphur Civic Drive Fishing Pier, Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries gave us some funding, and we signed a cooperative endeavor agreement with the state on June 1st. Port Sulphur Library for Plaquemines, the contractor has resumed work, and the pilings are being driven there. On the West Bank Sewer Project, we are currently purchasing rights-of-way, awaiting DHH and USAID Corps of Engineer comments, and the project has been advertised for construction, and the bid opening is scheduled for June 19th. Lake Hermitage Road project is moving quite well. I believe that the first phase is complete or is just about complete, and we're working with FEMA on that issue as well with GOSEP to keep that project moving. On Main Street drainage, also during this time period, we signed an act of donation for artifacts found by the State Historical Preservation Office when they were conducting their environmental assessment for the Main Street drainage project. Those artifacts will in turn be given to PPG, and we're going to display them at the Fort Jackson Museum. And finally, we have been working on this matter, been working on getting the swimming pool on the East Bank. And I think either Councilman Bartholomew, I think Reverend Edwards is here. He just has an update on that as to what occurred. Okay, Ms. Turner. Yeah, if you would, yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Councilman Bartholomew. I'm sorry, my name is Darylyn DeMaul Turner. I'm 108 Thomas Lane, downtown Phoenix, Louisiana. I'm representing Zion Travelers Cooperative Center on today. First of all, thank you for opening up the pool on today. It was a fight to get it open, but I appreciate the fact that it is open now. And I do appreciate that Port Selford swimming pool is going to be worked on soon. So thank you for that. But I have my group here that I want to just ask a question.
I am Larry L. Turner. I am with Zion Travelers. My question is, why when opening our pool on the East Bank, we face so many delays?
Go ahead. Well, we all, and then we'll.
Appointing authority, civil service, was the holdup.
My name is Colin Harvey from Zion Travelers, and I want to know who holds the power in Plaquemines Parish.
For what?
Who holds the power?
It all depends what you're looking for. It's different entities. In reference to what? In reference to the power, in reference to what?
Opening of the pool.
Opening of the pool.
Civil service. The appointing authority is civil service. They have to improve all employees and send it to the administration to sign off and put them into the workforce. But if civil service don't do it, it won't happen. So they're the hold up on all that kind of action. And mainly the director, Ms. Ellen Barrios, is the person that's responsible for that.
Hello, I'm Kyrie.
Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Kyrie Harvey. I would like to know why the civil service have so much power in that matter.
All I think maybe the trainers can tell us that. Legally, I don't know. It's a legal question, so maybe they can answer.
There's a great deal of litigation that's been going on the last year and a half with civil service and the rest of the government, and unfortunately, there has not been a very amicable relationship that's always been constructive in that time period between civil service and the rest of the government. There are many issues involved in that. I will say that in terms of how the power was acquired, the people of Plaquemines Parish voted for the civil service system in an effort to protect the employees who historically had worked for the government and been at-will employees, which meant they didn't have any job security. And so the people said, well, the folks that work for the people, they ought to have a little, some protections. And so the civil service, in theory, was created for that purpose. Unfortunately, some of the details have in a sense created like a Frankenstein monster. Sometimes you try to do a good thing and you might overstep. So there might be a need for correction.
I think the other thing they need to realize is that the civil service is a state agency. It's not the local entity that endorse the civil service. So it has to be voted on statewide, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So it's not the parish. The local people can determine to dissolve this or dissolve that. It has to be on the ballot for the whole state.
Right. So
go ahead. Go ahead.
So there isn't anybody that's over civil service that can mandate what civil service does and how they, and what is required of them.
Civil Service Commission.
Okay, so the Civil Service Commission mandates what the Plaquemines Parish Civil Service does. So somebody's dropping the ball somewhere.
Civil Service Commission runs it. Nobody else does.
Okay.
They have the last say-so on all entities relative to civil service.
So in all actuality, civil service has the power over the parish?
No, over civil service. Not over the parish.
And
over civil service and employees, they're the ones who certify employees.
Correct.
But the civil service is not a governmental entity for a
I understand all of that.
Operate, but that's not what you said. I'm just trying to clarify what you said. The day-to-day operation belongs to the parish president.
Right.
Legislative authority, appropriation of money belongs to the council.
Okay.
Now, when it's relative to employees to be certified, it's civil service to do that. Civil service hire all the civil service employees. We don't do that. Now, what they'll do, with parish employees, they'll send 3 nominees to the parish president.
Right.
And they would pick one out of the 3 and send back to civil service to get them processed.
So the civil service holds the ball?
Yes. For that part.
And if I might add, the commission is appointed by the council, and when the vacancies recently came up, the council did, take it very seriously and vetted, and I think in a very positive way, the applicants and the people who they were going to put in there. And so there's been some additions to the Civil Service Board, which I think in time will probably help facilitate what y'all are asking for. And
right, because the only problem is for the last 3 years we've been dealing with hiring of the lifeguards on the East Bank side of the river, which means that we have to wait to open up our public pool so that our kids can swim because civil service is holding up the process. So all I'm saying is, why do we have to have so many delays on the East Bank side of the river?
Or civil service, deal with them. I'm with you.
Oh, I'm going to deal with them. I'm just asking. I just came to you all first to find out how can you all deal with them?
Oh, we can't.
Or can we deal with them together?
All we do is send legislation, demand stuff, request.
Can we all deal with them together? Because this is the future, and this is why I'm here.
We are dealing with civil service as we speak. We're constantly dealing with civil service. We are not just today. It's ongoing.
For the last 3 years, we've been dealing with civil service as well. So now that we know what we need to do as a community, we're going to back you up as far as dealing with civil service, because enough is enough.
And I think it's not civil service as much as the executive director. You know, I never get when the guy that was your director, what's his name? Benny Boy, what's his name? What's his name? No, the other one. Stanley Wallace. This council, Stanley Wallace, was the #1 enemy of this parish. This council went out and got everything to get Stanley Wallace. The executive director of the civil service disrespect this government. She act like she is all. She need to be terminated. The problem is not the civil service board. You got a director that willfully doing whatever she wants. You got a director. We have a young man that could be a lifeguard. She took it on herself to say that this guy cannot be a lifeguard. That is too much power. And the issue is the director need to be terminated. You know, and so we're going to do all we can as a community to go at her, because we hope that the council, the same way you went at Stanley Wallace, that you come at this executive director, because she's doing more harm to this parish than Stanley Wallace, because she's destroying the future of our children. So we hope with the same enthusiasm y'all came after Stanley Wallace, that y'all make sure that the executive director of civil service be terminated. That's the real issue.
Mr. Reverend, before you leave, I can say for a fact that this council has created legislation and voted a lack of confidence to give that to the Civil Service Board. And I think we passed that legislation maybe a month or two ago.
Terminated?
Absolutely.
Okay, why is she still here?
I have no idea. Okay. But I will answer your question as well, and I appreciate you guys coming up here, because this is not just an East Bank issue.
It's not.
This is a parish-wide issue, and as Mr. Landry and Mr. Bartholomew has said, we've been in numerous litigations with the Civil Service and the Civil Service Board for different types of things. We've been dealing with this for the last 3 years. You know how you fix the issue? You don't go through Civil Service. You create positions that are unclassified, that are seasonal, lifeguard positions, and you have the parish president appoint them. It's as simple as that. That's a simple fix.
And that works for me.
And that's the quick fix. So, you know, we'll look into that. I'm sure Councilman Bartholomew will as well. But believe me, this hasn't fallen on deaf ears. I think we've all seen it. We've seen your Facebook post and you going live. So,
and I hated to take it there, but I mean, something needs to be done. Like, our kids have suffered for the last 3 years, and it's just unfair. It's really unfair, and I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mr. Russo?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the real answer to that sign right there, who holds the power in our parish, it's the people that hold the power. And to answer Mr. Edwards' comments about why the director is still here, is because the Civil Service Board hasn't replaced her, because no one else has the authority to replace the Civil Service Director. So if you look on the agenda, we have some issues that are coming up that we're going to change. As you heard earlier, we are working with the board members as they change out, and hopefully we will have a Civil Service Board that will hold the director and its staff accountable, because no one else has any authority over those employees other than the Civil Service Board. Now, without getting into the weeds about what's the history of that, we know that civil service is here and probably here to stay. So we have a system that's not working properly. We have to fix it. And that's what we're trying to do with some of the changes that we have on the agenda today. But this council has no authority to change that director.
I respect that.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Roussel, for the part about the board, and we hope that every council member that appointed somebody to the board will look at it. At the very next board meeting, we've already getting together a petition to request that the Civil Service Board terminate her. And so we hope that all of you all talk to your person that you're appointed, that they be sympathetic to the wishes we're going parish-wide to get petition, because we don't think that you should have anybody in this parish as an executive director like this person is, who willfully do whatever she wants. It's time for her to go. She is the problem. We know she's the problem. So since she said to the community, we hope that you really talk to your people to really listen and pay attention to when people come to that meeting. I think it's July the 6th.
All right, thank you. I will say one more thing before Ms. Sullivan's in line here. Ms. Sullivan actually did call my office as the vice chair to ask her assistance in getting Ms. Barrios to the meeting today on a separate issue, not this issue, on something that she had on legislation on the agenda. I never received a return call, so my office sent an official email to put it on record that we requested her to be in attendance, and you see what's going on. So,
because we will be at the July 6th
okay,
service.
and that's where it needs to be really addressed.
We will be
yeah.
there.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Turner, the only comment that I would like to add to this conversation is in regards to what Reverend Turner, the comment Reverend Turner made earlier. We may not have, as a council, have the authority over civil service. It is the commission. But what we do have, we have authority over our budget. And they have refused time and time again, this council have refused to address her budget. Matter of fact, we pad her budget every year in order for her to come back and sue this council. So I agree with you, Reverend Turner. The same effort that we took, this council took to address the directors is the same effort we should take against Ms. Barrios. And that's my conclusion.
Thank you.
You tricked me again, Ms. Sullivan, to jump into this thing. Because I do have to say, I do take some exception to that, because I personally took money from her budget on multiple occasions during the budget hearings for specific reasons. So this council has stripped her budget. It's not padded. I can guarantee you that much. Because I have personally drafted legislation to do just that. Mr. Black, Ms. Sullivan, yeah.
Mr. Black, I would just like to know, how does she afford her attorneys?
I think it's going to come from the board, not from the council. I'm not sure how she's paying for it, but that would be my assumption. But I can tell you this, that you can look down her line item budget, and you can see that we stripped it. This council did. I know that for a fact.
I'm not absolutely sure, but I'll check.
Mr. Bartholomew?
Yeah, it's my understanding that we pay for their attorney through our budget, because we give them all the money they need, and she doesn't have any income for civil service. They don't have a tax or any kind of budgetary other than the money they receive from the council. But the simplicity of it all is this, that every 2 years we have lifeguard certification. They're certified for every 2 years. Now, the last year before, we had lifeguards that were certified the previous year. So that means the lifeguard this year was certified last year. And all she had to do was send them to take their physical and their drug test. Then complete their paperwork. Then put them to work. There's nothing else to do. And why did that take 3 months? I don't know. That's what it took, 3 months. Because if I'm not, Mr. Roussel can attest to this, back in November last year, we made the suggestion that the lifeguards at the event stay on the advertisement till they complete. till they are filled. Since November of last year, till they're filled. So, and when the people came up, the time to the summer, David Riley worked for Recreation, went to the school, passed out all the application and everything else, then we turned those in. And it's not till May that she decided to put it into process. Those two kids, I ain't talking about the ones who had to get certified this year. I'm talking about those that were certified last year. It's just a matter of 2 steps other than paperwork. Physical and drug tests. That's it.
And because of the ferry, one of the young men waited until Friday to go get his drug test done. And according to civil service, it was a failed drug test because he didn't go on Thursday. Now, keep in mind, we have to deal with one ferry coming from the East Bank side of the river. And I think it's totally unfair that, you know, the time it takes for us to get down to Port Selfa, you know what I'm saying? And the drug test was passed, but according to civil service, it was failed because he didn't go on Thursday. But they got a call at 2:30 to be down there for 4:30. And I know for a fact it's impossible to get to Port Selfa in a matter of an hour. So the drug test was considered failed because he didn't go on Thursday, and he went Friday morning at 9:30. So I don't understand how a person can be turned down with a failed drug test if he went to get it done. And now he can't work. And he goes to college, so he can't work and he can't pay for the stuff he needs because of a failed drug test that he actually passed.
Mr. Russo? You want to cue?
Oh, I wasn't, but I'll take it. Look, the end of the story is this, that she works for the board. You look on the agenda, we have issues. We've been having issues. There's executive sessions that we've been in litigation with, so we share your pain. But to belabor the point, it's not going to do us any good until we resolve that issue. So
we will see y'all on July 6th.
All right, with that, this
Oh,
issue
Tyrell
is over.
has something to say.
This issue is over, so what do? Hit it. That's it.
Thank you.
Next item.
Thank you.
All right, dude, thank you.
Good, John.
Councilman, I'd like to recognize Mr. Earl Sino, now a newly appointed commissioner, who has been very aggressive in this campaign to get this thing done. So I really thank you, Mr. Sino. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that opportunity.
Sure, thank you, no problem. All right, let's get this thing rolling here. Let's move to item 4A. Let's take 1, 2, and 3 with no objections in global.
4A1, Gulf South Pipeline Company, LP, application number 2018-241 dated March 29, 2018, replace a deep anode ground bed used for cathodic protection, West Point Lahash, site number 1, Councilmember Trufant Salvant. Number 2, Gulf South Pipeline, LP, application number 2018-268, dated April 10, 2018, replace a deep anode ground bed used for cathodic protection, Venice area, site number 2, Councilmember Williams. Number 3, Ledco Gas Gathering, LLC, application number 2018-380, dated May 24, 2018, removal of 2 abandoned facilities, Bayou Long and Dehydration, Bastion Bay Field, Councilmember Edgecombe.
Offer Ms. Salvant, second by Ms. Bartholomew. Any questions from the audience? We have one pending. Hit it again, Irv. Well, you double hitting it. There you go. All right. And it passes 7 to 1 abstention, myself, and 1 no vote from Ms. Williams. Sorry, absent. Item 4A4, please.
Arteman and Associates, Inc., application number 2018-381, dated May 25, 2018. Drill 14 soil borings and perform 9 CPTs for Bell Chase Bridge and Tunnel, Bell Chase. Councilmember Black.
Offer. Ask for a second. Second, Mr. Lepine. Any questions, comments from the table, from the audience? Machine's open. This is not a vote on tolls.
2 votes pending.
Got two pending. Mr. Juneau? All right, 8-0. Let's move to item 4B.
P&M Firework.
Before you read it, we have a moratorium, and I don't know how he got this permit, but he hasn't had a permit in the last 2 years, so I can't pass this right now. Okay, bring it up.
Can you wait? Hold on, wait. We got to read it first. No, sir.
P&M Fireworks, Paul Tozan, fireworks stand renewal, new location, 9087B, Highway 23, Belle Chase, Councilmember Juneau.
Yes, like I was saying. Okay, I don't offer it, I just discussion. Right. All right, the reason I'm discussing this, I had talked to Mr. Tozan last year, and I had told him that I couldn't pass it because we have a moratorium. Now, I see where he got a new location. He never called me. The permit department hadn't called me. So I'm going to have to defer this for right now.
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Same.
The second's withdrawn. Hold on a second. If we don't get another second.
Okay.
Are you withdrawing? He withdrew a second. Are you withdrawing? Are you deferring or are you?
All right, I can't defer it. Let me ask you.
You can
with
defer.
the permit. Wait, let me talk to Mr. When did he come in for that?
Hold on, get a second, Mr. Juneau.
All right.
All right,
All
Mr.
right.
Collins, back in a second.
All right.
Open for discussion.
When did he come get the permit? I understand that, but he hadn't had one in the past 2 years.
As you know, as we've discussed
Right.
on several occasions, Councilman Juneau, that has been a problem, an ongoing problem with getting people in to renew these fireworks stands. So if you're saying if they have not renewed in the past and they come in to renew, they come in from the cold, so to speak, and renew
They
that.
come in from 2 years ago.
Well,
we put a moratorium on it.
Okay, well, at your direction, at your pleasure. I mean,
I mean, he never called me. I never received a call from him. I saw it on the agenda today, and this is why I'm not presenting it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we're always there to discuss these things if you want to give us a call.
Scott Lott, residents of Plaquemines Parish, live at 9273 Highway 23. Everything you're saying, Mr. Juneau, is incorrect. He spoke to you last year. He had a license last year at a different location. But due to the location that he had and his concern of the public and the safety of the residents of this parish, he decided not to open it up at that location. And he asked you if you could submit it to the council, his new location, at which time you refused to do so. And you said that come first of the year that you would have no problem to do, with anything.
Where is he, Mr. Lott?
What's that, sir?
Where is Mr. Tozan?
He's at work today, sir.
He's at work?
Yes, sir.
All right.
But again, it's a renewal. You're saying he hadn't had a license in 2 years.
that.
That's incorrect. He had one last year, less than 6 months ago.
But he called me.
But again,
I don't
he
wanna
has to call you to file a permit?
Hang on,
Mr.
Does he
Lott.
have to call you to file a permit? I thought that was the permit department.
All right, Mr. Lott, let Mr. Juneau answer the question.
Let me explain. I talked to him last year. You wasn't on the conversation. You wasn't nowhere around when I talked to him. I told him possibly he could do it, but I can't let no one else do it because we have a moratorium.
He had a license prior to your moratorium. He had one last year, sir.
He had it parked at an illegal place.
It wasn't illegal. It was at the same. He didn't even put it up. He had a permit for the location that was approved. He chose not to open it at that location.
Mr. Lott, 1 second. Mr. Juneau, you want to defer this until Mr. Tozan can
till
be
he
present?
call me. Yes.
I think the.
Will you have time? Because 4th of July, you open next week, sir.
I understand that.
I mean,
The thing is,
Mr. Lott, if you're here representing Mr. Tozan, that's one story.
That's what I'm doing.
But Mr. Tozan is not here.
I'm here
You
representing.
probably should have been here.
Well, again, if he knew it was going to be an issue, he would have took off for work to come do this. But he didn't see that there was an issue when he filed the permit. The permit needed a letter from the landlord. He got that. He got everything that he needed from the permit.
Let's
Let's let
Mr. Metcalf.
The permit department did not say that he needed to contact Mr. Juneau because he would have done that.
All right,
He's
tight.
got all his fire marshal permits and everything.
Hang tight. Mr. Metcalf, do you have anything to weigh in on this?
Well, and it wasn't my understanding that an ongoing permit would be subject to a moratorium, or if there were gaps in the approval. Now, I don't have his paperwork from last year in front of me. I'm not sure if there was or not. Mr. Lott's saying there wasn't.
I talked to him. He was very understanding when I talked to him last year. I told him I would like for him to call me before he does it so I could speak to him and ask him where he's going. And it's not that I don't want him to do it, but I think it would be against the people that have a stand now if I would allow him to do it and not allow no one else to do it, because no one else did it since we put a moratorium on it. It's not that I'm against the gentleman. I just don't want to go against the other 15 that has a fireworks.
He had a license prior to your moratorium. He had one less than 6 months ago. When was the moratorium reissued?
The moratorium was done 2 years ago.
Okay, he had one within the 2 years, so he's not a new license.
What's the location?
I'm sorry?
What's the location of this?
It's right across the highway from C-Train. It's you have the information?
Gabe's Auto?
Right next to, no, it's right next to Bell Chase Automotive.
9087B Highway.
And that's where he talked to him about putting it last year, and he wouldn't do it.
There is an NXA, a plot plan for
Everything was done. Everything that he...
Is that a renewal, Mr. Metcalf?
Yes. Renewal, that's correct.
All right, it's Mr. Juneau's decision. This is his permit. It's up to Mr. Juneau. Nobody, look, I'm about to turn everybody's mics off. This is Mr. Juneau's floor. Mr. Juneau.
At this moment, I can't go with you, Mr. Lott, because I like Mr. Tozan. I wish he would have been here.
Again, can we defer? I mean,
we can't
move it, and I have him here within the next 30 minutes.
Mr. Juneau.
Can I have him here in 30 minutes?
Yeah, bring him in 30.
No problem.
What do you want to do, Mr. Juneau?
I'll put it off for 30 minutes.
All right, it's deferred. Withdraw it second, deferred.
C.
Yes, ma'am.
Sidney Hugh, place mobile home in a R-1C zoning district, 214 Delta Air Drive, Buras, Louisiana. Councilmember Edgecombe.
Off of Mr. Edgecombe, second by Mr. Lapine. Any comments, questions from the table? From the audience? None. Machine's open. And it passes 7-0. Mr. Juneau was absent from the room. I just want to make note as well, for the record, Mr. Bartholomew is here. He came in just prior to executive session, so I want to make sure that's reflected in the minutes. Thank you. All right, please cue in if you have any. Everybody's walking around. Any introduction to resolutions, please cue in, and we'll get these done. Mr. Russo?
Yes, an ordinance.
Yep.
An ordinance to prohibit the parking of vehicles on Culvert Road between Barry Road and P Street and to establish a penalty for the violation thereof, to authorize the parish president or his designee to have no parking signs installed and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Was that all?
So,
Mr. Edgecombe?
Barbara?
An ordinance approving a plan of re-subdivision of the property described as Tract C and Tract D of Hewitt-Becknell Division, Lower Star Plantation, Section 2, T165 South, R24E, into Lot C-1 and D-1 of the Upper and Lower Star Plantations, Section 2, T16S, R24E, by Gilbert, Kelly, and Courtier, Inc., dated January 21st, 2018, the owner having fulfilled the requirements of the subdivision and re-subdivision ordinance of the Parish of Plaquemines without cost of the Plaquemines Parish government or the Parish of Plaquemines, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
That's all, sir.
Ms. Almont?
Yes, sir. I have three. An ordinance to amend the 5-year capital improvement plan by appropriating $2,745,751 to the Plaquemines Housing Assistance Program, better known as PHAP, from Community Development Block Grant, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to amend the 5-year capital improvement plan, upgrade Ironton Park projects, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance by the Plaquemines Parish Council as and on behalf of the West Bank Levee District and Beerus Levee District to appropriate new perpetual flood protection levee, flood wall and drainage ditch easement and new temporary work easement in certain portions of land in Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, to construct the New Orleans to Venice West Bank Hurricane Protection Levee Project NOV 9, send due to city price. Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, for levee, flood wall, drainage, flood access, and hurricane protection purposes, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. That's it, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Burt.
I have two. An ordinance to amend the 5-year capital improvements plan, new Jesuit Bend Park project, and upgrade Oakville Park project, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to amend the 5-year capital improvements plan, drainage, Jesuit Bend project, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. That's all, sir.
Mr. Bartholomew?
Yeah, ordinance authorizing Plaquemines Parish government as a guarantor of the renew and approve the existing 4-inch gas line pipeline right-of-way agreement with Arrowhead, Louisiana Guaranting LLC as guarantee and affiliate of Hillcore Energy Company and Harvest Pipeline Company, covering parish-owned property located in Section 30, Township 19 South, Range 17 East, South Quarantine Bayfield, Grand Prairie Levee District, Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, to authorize the parish president to execute the pipeline right-of-way agreement and otherwise to provide respect thereto. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have three. An ordinance to amend the 2018 General Fund Operating Expenditure Budget, Legal Judgments Department, line item salaries and wages for settlement of case number 64-358, 23rd JDC, Division B, authorizing an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government to fund a civil service administrator position and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a donation to the Plaquemines Parish Council Department and to amend the General Fund 2018 operating revenue and expenditure budgets, Parish Council, General Department, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution to authorize the council attorney to take such actions as are necessary to conclude the matter of PPC versus PP President, docket number 64-047, Division A, 23rd JDC, Plaquemines Parish, State of Louisiana, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. That's all I have. All right, let's move to item 6A1, please.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 17-88 to authorize the public sale for restricted use of 650.11 acres of surplus Plaquemines Parish government lands in Plaquemines Parish and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I'll offer and ask for a second. Second by Mr. Russo. Basically, this is authorizing our legal department, who has done a lot of work, Mr. Cooley, thank you, Mr. Landry, to go out for bid on a particular piece of property that we deem the surplus. It's 650 acres that is currently known to be the Woodlands Trails. Any comments or questions, Mr. Bartholomew?
Yeah, I can't support that because I think we need to save our lands. We don't have any as it stands now, and I think Plaquemines Parish needs to have some property of their own and decide to do what we need to put in our commerce or whatever else we decide to do rather than sell. I can see leasing maybe, but not selling. But that I just cannot support.
The good thing about this legislation, it doesn't allow them to do anything with this particular piece of property. Whoever does purchase it, it has to remain a conservancy. It can't be used for any type of development. If there's any type of wetlands mitigation that is used for it, we get compensated for it. That was all written into the legislation. So it's basically, this is basically what it does is it gives us immediate revenue, and it also preserves those 650 acres as they are intact, and will do nothing that we know development or anything to that property. If they do try to do something, it will revert back to the ownership of the Plaquemines Parish government. Mr. Russo?
Yes, I would encourage my colleagues to support this legislation. This is something that's been in the works for many years. It's the Woodlands Conservancy. It's an area to preserve green space in the parish, and I think that this will be a tremendous opportunity for us to grow in the greenfield area. The issue about not having property, I have an item on the agenda which will clear the title to 700 acres, which will more than replace these acreage. That will be addressed at the next meeting. So we're not losing any property. It's something that it's going to be an asset to us. In the event that something would happen to the Woodlands Conservancy, the parish will be in the position of obtaining it again. But the real goal about this, and you heard all of the fishermen and all the people who had concerns about the environment. This is a prime environment project to keep the project green. It's a walking trail. It's a conservancy. It's something that if you had issues with the diversion and destroying the habitat, you should have issues with this going into commerce. And this protects that property from going into commerce. So I ask your support, and we move forward with this.
Mr. Burt?
Yeah, I just have one comment. As I've advocated before, I would ask that, if we could dedicate a portion of those proceeds back to the Plaquemines Parish Recreation Department. Thank you.
Mr. Bartholomew?
Yes, I have two questions. One is how much it's being sold for. And second, I think that we can resolve the same thing if we would have a long-term lease on that property. Give it to them at a long-term lease with nothing said. Rather than sell.
I answer your first question. We don't know how much it's being sold for because that's why it's going out to bid. We expect to get anywhere over. LV, can I even comment on that or no? On what the expectations are on the appraisal? No. A lot of money.
So it hasn't been. If it's just one person we're selling it to.
It's not one person we're selling it to, so that's why we don't know. We're putting it out to bid. And that's why I'm very cautious about saying one thing or another. This is going out to bid, and they have stipulations on if you purchase the property, what you can do with it. And those stipulations include, and are not limited to, conserving it or preserving it as a conservancy, and no development on the property. I don't want to. I don't know, LV. Do you want to discuss?
I can address. Is my speaker on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can address the sale and minimum value, and it's already been addressed in the first ordinance. I think it's addressed in this ordinance as well. If and when this piece of property goes out for public bid for sale, we have to have a minimum bid of $5,000 per acre. That's the fair market value. So I think that answers your question. We cannot sell it. I mean, the council can consider bids at less than that, but the law says you can't accept for any less than the fair market value. We had it evaluated just recently at $5,000 an acre.
Thank you. Any comments from the floor? From the audience? None? Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
I want to ask Mr. Roussel the question because I'm a strong supporter of the Woodland Conservancy. How would it benefit them? They got a guarantee they know who's going to buy this property. Because why would somebody buy that kind of land unless, if I heard the gentleman right, maybe because they just want it for the minerals?
Barbara, I have no control over his mic. I have no control over his mic. I'm on a vote board.
I'm on. No, this is the situation. This is a public bid for public property with stringent restrictions on it that will require whoever is the successful bidder to keep it in a green space, to keep it in a conservancy mode to where it will be able to be developed only into the Woodland Conservancy. For instance, if they had a grant for a building for a bathroom for the hikers that walk on the trail. They could do that. But people would give them money if they donate money to them if they owned it. They don't give money if they have a short-term lease, even a long-term lease. It has hindered their ability to raise funds. There's been the idea of an interpretation center. An interpretive center would be able to be built to be able to do as Lafourche and other parishes have done, to be able to educate children when they come out to the site on the marshes and everything that we've talked about and everything we've advocated today about saving. Well, this is an educational component of it, which makes it harder to sell than, you know, the comments that we heard earlier today.
No, I'm with you. Our children have worked with that group for 2 years. We went over there, spent time. They have came over and plant trees in our community. I was just concerned about that it's being sold, and we guarantee you have it. And I heard Mr. Burke asking for some part for recreation, because I know that'll change the landscape for the green space if you tie recreation into it.
He's trying to spend the money. We haven't got it yet. So the issue is we need to get to that point so we can, decide what we do with the funding. But the current property, we don't know who's going to be the successful bidder. But
you're going to put in restriction where it have to remain in the form that is, so children could continue to go there. 'Cause like I said, our children been going there for 3 years during the summertime, and they've came over and plant trees in our area. So that's why I was really concerned, because I think what they're doing is really a great program, and I would hate to see us lose that.
Thank you.
All right, let's move for a vote, please. Machines open. No, one pending, please.
Thank you.
Item 682.
An ordinance granting ingress and egress servitude to purchaser of 650.11 acres of surplus lands is authorized by ordinance number 17-88 and is amended and readopted by ordinance number 18-65 and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
All offer. Second by Mr. Russell. Basically what this does is it provides the roadway, gives them access to the roadway that we have from F. Edward Bear to the entrance of the Conservancy grounds. What's the, well, we don't have a.
No, we do. On line 5, the ordinance number is 1865, and the date is today's date, June 14th.
All right. Any comments or questions from the audience? Machines open. Passes 8-0. Item 3, please.
An ordinance approving a plan of re-subdivision for Cherie and Alfred P. Jr. by Brant Hammett, an associate certified by Hugh McCurdy II, PLS, dated March 28, 2018. The owner having fulfilled all of the requirements of the subdivision and re-subdivision ordinance of the parish of Plaquemines without cost to Plaquemines parish government or the parish of Plaquemines and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I'll offer on behalf of Councilwoman Williams, who's absent. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Edgecombe. Any questions or comments from the table? From the audience?
Yes, one quick question. Is this a re-subdivision of property? Because it says of Sherry and Alfred P. Jr. I mean, is it a tract of land? What are they re-subdividing?
Hold on.
They're creating 2 lots out of 1.
Okay, I mean, the way the ordinance says, it's a re-subdivision of Sherry and Alfred P. by this.
It says an ordinance approving a plan of re-subdivision of Sherry and Alfred Pete.
Okay.
This is a subdivision of their property.
No lot numbers, no
Yeah,
nothing.
they do. They have lots P1 and P2.
Oh, okay, it doesn't say.
Divorce or anything. This is.
Oh, okay, it didn't say anything about property.
Okay.
Thank you for your attentiveness. All right. Any other comments or questions? Let's move for a vote, please.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Move for a vote. I'm not on. Yeah, open the machine. I mean, just go ahead and show it. I have a verbal yes. 8-0 with a verbal from me. Item 4.
An ordinance approving a plan of re-subdivision of property of Tract A from former Nicholson Tract, Naomi, Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, into lots A1, A2, and A2. Tract A, former Nicholson Tract, Naomi, Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, is shown on the plans and plat of survey by Dufresne Surveying and Engineering, Inc., dated March 7, 2017, revised May 16, 2018, the owner having fulfilled all of the requirements of the subdivision and re-subdivision ordinance of the Parish of Plaquemines without cost to the Plaquemines Parish government or the Parish of Plaquemines, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Edgecombe. Offer, Mr. Edgecombe. I'll second. Hold on one second.
Microchip?
Solving you up.
Okay, I was trying to get a specific location. And
Yes, ma'am. It's right there by Mike Hotel.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right.
Hold on. Hey, whenever, just please try to get in the queue so I can recognize and get you guys on the mic when you want to speak.
Gotcha. I was on earlier. My apologies.
That's all right.
Basically, what it does is my understanding that it takes the large tract of land that the microtel is on. It divides it into 3 parcels. What it does is it puts the hotel, motel on one parcel, and then it creates 2 that front the highway, 23, on either side of the main road that goes back. What it does is it creates 2 lots for the purposes of putting them into commerce for commercial use in the front. That's my
Thank you, Mr. Metcalf. Any other questions or comments from the audience, from the table, from the audience? Machine's open. Item passes 8-0. Go to item D, please.
A resolution authorizing the parish president on behalf of Plaquemines Parish government to name and accept a proposal of the Plaquemines Gazette as the official journal for the Plaquemines Parish Council and all other political subdivisions and districts situated therein, of which the Plaquemines Parish Council is the governing authority.
I'll offer on behalf of Councilwoman Williams. Ask for a second. Second, Mr. Bartholomew. Any questions or comments from the table? From the audience? With none, machine's open. Passes 8-0. Item E, please.
An ordinance to provide for the acceptance of donations by the Fort Jackson Museum and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I'll offer on behalf of Councilwoman Williams. Second, Mr. Russo. Any questions been called? Machine's open. Mr. Lapine, you want to do a verbal? Got a verbal yes, 8-0. Item F.
An ordinance by the Plaquemines Parish Council that backflow preventers be required for all bona fide commercial properties open to public accommodations and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I'm going to defer to this till Ms. Williams gets back. Item G, I'm sorry, Ms. Barber. G.
An ordinance to rescind, null, and set aside ordinance number 18-13 and resolution number 18-111 relative to issuing a 3% cost of living raise to each classified and non-classified employee effective January 1st, 2018, and to implement the merit increase as was done by the Civil Service Director for January and part of February, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Mr. Russo?
I'll offer that for a second.
I'll second. Mr. Bartholomew, Mr. Solomon. Mr. Bartholomew.
Okay. The,
You what?
no, needs an explanation.
Well, I don't think we can call it a question without an argument, but. Mr. Russo, you got it.
The ordinance rescinds ordinance 18-13 and resolution 18-111. And what this does, it puts us in a position to where we have a stalemate at the time with civil service and the rules as to what comes first, the merit increase or the cost of living increase. We budgeted a cost of living increase in the last year in the budget hearing to become effective January the 1st, with the understanding and thought that all employees would be able to get a 3% increase effective January the 1st. The merit increase was implemented by civil service for January and parts of February, and then it stopped. So no one has received a merit increase from the mid-February period till today. So what this does, it puts us back on the same playing field as before the ordinances, that the 3% merit increase will go into effect. Those individuals who have not received their merit increase to date will be caught up, and then those individuals who have a merit increase coming on the anniversary date after today or after the effectiveness of this ordinance will get their merit increase on their anniversary date as normal. So what this really does is to take us back to ground zero and start over, and then we have another ordinance following this to address the problem that we saw. So hopefully this will work out. We met with the Civil Service Board. Civil Service Board was very cooperative in their meetings, especially the new members who are willing to work with us rather than litigate with us. So we're hoping for new days and better days ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Ms. Alvant.
Yes, I just want to add that I support Mr. Russo's legislation, but I want to make it known that the original legislation that we are rescinding was my legislation. And the reason we had to rescind the legislation is because I did not have the patience nor the fortitude to deal with Ms. Barrios. You know, so again, we back to the original conversation what we had earlier. The legislation was there. There was barriers that was put in place by Ms. Barrios to prevent the legislation from going forward. And as I said, I didn't have the patience. I did not have the patience. So I support Mr. Russo's legislation. He picked up the legislation and he moved forward with it. I accommodated him after I learned that the commissioners, Mr. Sino was going to be involved, and Mr. What's the other guy? Mr. Andrew, and very supportive. And we were able to come up with all the legislation that you're seeing right here. But I just wanted that to go on record, just to see the obstacles that this council have to go through and the hoops that we have to hop through in order to deal with Ms. Ellen Barrios. Thank you.
Mr. Lapine.
I too will be supporting this. The main concern here is the employees. We had to do it to get it right. Thank Mr. Russo for his diligent work. He actually explained it the last 10 minutes than I've been trying to get for the last 10 months. But I appreciate his hard work and effort, and this will definitely be a win for the employees. So thank you, Mr. Russo.
Any comments from the audience? All right, with none. He's a great guy. All right, let's move to a vote. Yeah.
This minute.
Yeah. Ms. Sullivan, I'm sure voted yes, so let's go 8-0. Verbal 8. Item H, please.
An ordinance requesting the Civil Service Commission evaluate the civil service rules relative to merit increases and the time frame of classified employee evaluations and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Mr. Russo.
I'll offer an extra second.
Second one was Solvant. We got a substitute, I'm sorry. You have a substitute, Mr. Russo?
With changes. No, with changes.
Yeah. Mr. Russo offers with changes. On H, yes.
Yes, please.
There are changes in the preamble as follows. On line 1, it says an ordinance requesting the Civil Service Commission evaluate. We're changing the word evaluate and replacing it with review and change, and then the remaining part stays the same. An ordinance requesting the Civil Service Commission review and change the civil service rules relative to merit increases and the time frame of classified employees' evaluation and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
It's off with changes. We have a unanimous second? Unanimous second.
Explain this.
No. I think we're good. We're good? You want to explain it? Mr. Russo?
Yes, this is an effort that was jointly had at the last meeting with the Civil Service Committee and a couple of us trying to get to the point where merit increases will become effective January the 1st. And what this will do will change the rule of anniversary dates that we just went through. And what will happen is just as other non-classified employees get their merit increase effective the first paycheck in January, this will require all evaluations to be into civil service by September the 1st. Now, what that's being said, this year will remain the same. However, next year, providing there is a merit increase budgeted, then those individuals will all receive their merit increase on the first check. That'll sync up everybody getting their paycheck increase, if there is one, at the same time. We've had great cooperation with the Civil Service Board again on this issue, and this will go to the Civil Service Board for their approval at their next meeting, and then it'll come back to us for a final vote. We put the language in here that we would like to see, that we worked out through the committee, so that when it gets to that Civil Service Board, we won't have any changes. We agreed that we're going to stick with the language that we all living with, and as long as no one gets involved in meddling with the language, we should be good. So I offer that, and hopefully this will be the first of many changes in the civil service rules to come. And we've included that in the conversation, that the next rule that we want to tackle is we want to see when positions are advertised, they are advertised until they are filled. We've had that discussion in this chamber many times about advertising a position for 2 weeks, it falls off, no one gets hired, we still have the vacancy going on for months and months at a time. Hopefully we'll change that rule next. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beshel?
Mr. Russo, on the evaluations, we've already had evaluations in this year already, but are those evaluations going to be used for next year's also? Okay, so whatever they received this year, they will get next year. All right, even the ones we've already done, or do we have to redo those?
This year's evaluations will have to be completed by September the 1st. If you've already done them up to today, then those are the ones that we'll use. If you have employees who have anniversary dates after September the 1st through December 31st, those evaluations have to be done and into civil service by September the 1st. And that will make everybody on the same page. This is a transitional year. Next year, it'll be the same. Everybody gets evaluated. And if you want to evaluate them on their anniversary date in your own department so you don't do them all at one time, that's fine. But they do have to be into civil service by September the 1st in order to implement the change in the rules to allow merit increases to become effective on the first paycheck in January.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Salvant?
Yes. I also want to make a comment to Mr. Sino. I just wanted you to know and go on record saying, as the newly elected member of the Commissioner for the Civil Service Department, that was a public request, as Mr. Black said earlier. That was a public, personal request that was made from me to the chairman. And the chairman requested that Ms. Ellen be present here today. And as you can see, she is not here. So I'm going to say good luck to Mr. Roussel and everybody else who has these legislation that's going to Ms. Ellen. Thank you.
Thanks. Any comment from the floor?
Let me say one more thing.
Mr. Russo.
Ms. Salvant, I committed to fix this problem, and I commit to stick with it, and we will fix this problem and many more to come.
Good guy twice in a row. Let's go. Pull it up for a vote. I'm voting. We have one pending. Anybody flashing? Anybody missed it? Jeff left. Yeah, he voted already. 8-0. Aye.
An ordinance to amend the 5-year capital improvements plan, solid waste transfer stations project, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Mr. Russo.
I'll offer next for a second.
Second one, Mr. Burt. Request to speak, and you can have the floor. You got the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Black. What this is the final budget contribution to the project for the solid waste transfer station. If you've ever visited the solid waste transfer station that's located behind the sewer plant, you know that it's in dire need of work. The DEQ has, occasionally visited us. And what we want to do now is we will move and relocate this facility to the Walker Road old landfill facility with a new facility that'll make it a lot easier to unload your trucks and items to be disposed of. And this is the final commitment to that project. Should be enough to cover it. We've already put up $2.5 million aside. The engineering and design basically has been done. And now this will be the final so we can go and move forward with building the project.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Any other comments from the table? From the audience? With none? Machine's open. Aye passes 7-0. Mr. Edgecombe is not in the room.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Delahousie, Mr. Edgecombe, is he going for the day, or is he coming back? You don't know? Okay, never mind. His stuff's still here. I didn't see it. Item M. Mr. Bartholomew, you move with M?
M's
withdrawn. Item N.
An ordinance authorizing an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
To offer with changes. Do we have a second? Second one, Ms. Salvant.
No cost, no avenue, funds, no revenue, it's already in place. Can't hear you.
Hold on, Mr. Bartholomew.
Stay quiet.
Never mind. Go ahead. Go ahead. Mike was on. Your mic's up.
They said no cost to the parish government. Money's already in place in posture. Yeah. Huh?
No additional cost. The money is there.
There's no cost. It's already there. Been appropriated.
All right. They're not working for free, John. These
Money is
positions
there.
are funded.
We're not appropriating any more money.
All right. Good.
How's that?
Any other questions, comments from the audience? From the table? I mean, from the floor, I'm sorry. With none? Is that Jeff's?
No.
We got one additional vote pending? All right, we got it. Item passes 7-0. Mr. Edgecombe is still out of the room.
An ordinance to amend the 2018 Road Maintenance Fund operating expenditure budget, road maintenance public right-of-way department, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Yeah. Line 10.
Are we filling that in before we get a second? Or are we, second one, Mr. Salvant. All right. Mr. Bartholomew?
Thought it was already filled in. Pass over. That'll come back.
That's the last one, sir.
No, it's not the last. You got 7. You got stuff under 7.
All right, let's pass over. Let's move to Mr. Juneau's legislation, the permit. Go back to, Mr. Juneau, you want to go back to that or no? Let's go back to, yep, 4B.
4B, P&M Fireworks, Paul Tozan, fireworks stand renewal, new location 9087B, Highway 23, Belle Chase. Councilmember Juneau.
Juneau?
Yes, I'm going back to that.
Offer?
And I'll offer it. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, with that, I'd like our lawyer to explain what I tried to explain. And if I made a mistake, I'm sorry. But I wanted to make sure that it was correct, because we have two people in here that have fireworks stands, and I wanted to make sure that they knew what we were doing. And this is why, if it caused a problem, I'm sorry, but I wanted to make sure it was correct, and that's why I like Mr. Shane to say something.
Which lawyer? Shane?
Shane.
There's a bunch of them around here.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Mr. Garrett and myself, we looked at the ordinance and we looked at the state law that applies to fireworks stands, and we see where there could be some confusion, and so it's quite understandable that it was a little murky. One thinks of a permit, well, you get a liquor permit, it's a site-specific permit. But when we looked at the law a little more closely and we compared it and read it with all the rules of legal construction, we arrived at the conclusion, I think Mr. Garrett agreed with me, that this is a personal permit. It's not a location-specific permit. So a person gets the permit to sell rather than the person getting a permit to sell at a specific location. Now, as a local government, we could, if the council so wished, place a restriction on the situs, but it is my understanding that administratively the permit department has never interpreted this as being a site-specific permit. So therefore, the moratorium would not apply because the situs is not of the moment. It doesn't matter.
Mr. Russo?
Yes, well, with that explanation brings up some issues and concern that we have to address with the ordinance, because in the past we've had an individual who had a stand where the state fire marshal was called and they shut him down because of the location was across the street from an auto repair store that had a lot of oil and grease on the ground. So yes, sir. So if we say that we give a permit to an individual, then that individual has to provide us with a safe spot, so to speak, to be able to feel comfortable that we don't run into the issue of what we've had before when the state fire marshal was called and say, no, that's not a good spot.
Well, state law still applies, and to the extent that the state restricts specific locations or types of locations from being a place where one can sell, that's going to apply universally to everybody. But as far as the permit and the life of the permit, it is not itself specifically tied to a location. It can move around with the person. So as long as the person doesn't move next to something that's going to burn or explode, theoretically, like a gas station, for instance, theoretically one could relocate to across the street or down the block, as long as they have a valid permit, without losing their grandfathered status, because that's really what the issue here was today, was the grandfathered status. Now, there are some other issues. I mean, having looked at it and interpreted it as we have, I mean, one could theoretically have a sort of a tamale stand approach to fireworks, drive around and have the ice cream truck music and sell you fireworks out the truck. But so that might be something y'all want to look at, but it does appear to be of a personal nature rather than a site-specific nature, and therefore it would be grandfathered. But that still would not vitiate the state law. We have to follow state law.
Well,
thank you.
I would just ask the legal department to look in how we can to refine the ordinance to make sure that we all are on the same page with the state law, as well as address the issues that I just raised.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
All right, Mr. Juneau wants to move on this. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Lott, you got to come up. Hold on. Hold on. Mr. Metcalf?
I think it's important to say that in the process of applying for a license to set up a fireworks stand, to place a fireworks stand, the applicant has to fulfill whatever requirements are in our ordinance. And I know in a lot of areas in our ordinance, it's vague. Councilman Juneau has worked very hard with us to try to fill in some of the gray areas, and we still have some that remain. But it's important to note that they also must apply to the State Fire Marshal's office. So sometimes when the State Fire Marshal comes in to do their review, they're looking at it the same way with new construction of a commercial building. They're looking at it from two different sets of code. So it is sometimes easy for us to miss something that isn't in our ordinance, which may be in the fire marshals. Councilman Roussel brought up the fire marshal having issues with a stand that was placed too close to an auto repair. So these are two separate functions that they must apply also to the state. State Fire Marshal has preview statewide over all fireworks stands. So thank you.
So before we put a fireworks stand up for approval, we already have State Fire Marshal approval on that stand and location?
No. Basically what we have is we have assurances, the same way we do with commercial structures, that the applicant has applied to the State Fire Marshal's office. So they work and inspect at their own speed and
So don't you think that, like we do with other projects, we hold up the permit until the Corps of Engineers or somebody like that approves it before we approve it?
In this case, no. It's done the same way it is with the construction of a commercial building. The applicant themselves are responsible for completing the project and closing the project out to the State Fire Marshal the same way they are to us.
I understand what he's saying, but I'm not happy with what he's saying. I would suggest that the legal department get us in line to where we're not issuing permits and then the fire marshal is canceling the permits.
Yes,
so however we got to sync it up, we need to sync it up.
Okay.
Give you a little background.
Comment, Mr. Lott.
We'll give you a little background. We'll file a permit with the parish. We give an address. We have to give them an address before we cite where the stand is, where it's located on the property itself. So before we do the permit, they do have a physical address. Once we get that, then we file with the state fire marshals. We cannot open a fireworks stand without the state fire marshals application and being passed. And getting back to your question about so close to the stand that you were talking about, how the fire marshal did that, this laws and rules that you have to be so many feet from combustibles or oil, the gas, and stuff like that. So they have their guidelines and rules that we have to apply by, even though the parish doesn't have it, or the fire marshals will shut us down. They come out and inspect each season along with the parish as well. And if we don't meet their guidelines and their all their rules, then they shut us down no matter what the parish does. So a lot of the stuff that you're asking, the fire marshals has that in their rules and regulations already. And if you want, I'll send y'all a copy of the rules and regulations of the state fire marshals, so that way if y'all have any questions or anything.
Since we're in litigation, I would prefer to get it from our attorneys.
All right.
All they got to do is file for the state fire marshal.
Ma'am?
Phyllis Cass. The permit is for the building itself. It's not for the individual, because if you go by just the individual, before you know it, you're going to have fireworks stands pop up in neighborhoods because you're not telling them that they can't do that. So you have to, that's the way you have to go by the zoning and not by the person that is actually doing it. You know, even if it's grandfathered in or not.
All right, thank you. Mr. Juneau?
Yes, let's vote.
All right, question's been called. Machine's open. Got one vote pending? Anybody's blinking? All right. And it passes 8-0. All right, item O is deferred now. Item 7C is deferred. Item 7E is deferred. Item 7F is deferred. Item 7J is deferred. The last item is item H. Item H is deferred. Do I have a motion to item 8? Item 8, approval of the minutes for May 24th, 2018 meeting is offered by Mr. Burt, seconded by Mr. Bartholomew. Machine is open. Motion to adjourn. Offer Mr. Bartholomew, seconded by Mr. Russo. Machine is open. All right. We are adjourned at 5:16. Thank y'all.
Take on me.